We were never able to see stars from the lunar surface or on the daylight side of the moon.
It's not black and white. I mean, it's black, but there's all kinds of polka dots.
Space is fake AF. Space is fake AF.
There's more than stars. You can see planets. You can see moons.
You see the gas.
It don't matter. Say the sky was not the limit. We fly to the moon in a nanosecond, but we haven't been back since 1972. Destroyed all the papers and blew up the Challenger crew, except for the twinsies. Space is fake AF. Space is fake AF.
Look out into deep space away from the sun, it's the darkest night you can imagine.
Alright, let's go ahead and get going. That's Chief Crow and the Flat Earthworms, stating the obvious. Space is fake AF. And if you believe in it, that's fine. It's merely the most recent iteration of a very ancient concept, which is heaven. It's actually a form of utopianism, to sell you on scientism and nasatology. And it worked. It has been boozled people for 55 plus years. I mean, that's when man landed on the moon, and I think that was the miracle that validated their entire paradigm. Nick Fingar says, did you see the ISS? No, I mean, it's not even possible. You can't see it if it doesn't exist. In fact, we did an ISS observation as a group experiment, and nobody saw any spaceships. Now, the apps told us that we would, and so I've been wondering, what's the cause here? And what's nice about it is that we had observers here, where I am, and myself, and then we had someone in California, someone in Denver, but the observer in Denver and myself here in Albuquerque would have seen the exact same one, or if we had, it would have proven, okay, well, we're seeing something in space, because if it's not 250 miles up, it wouldn't be visible from both here and Denver. But no, we didn't see anything. So we're moving on, because the burden of proof is not ours. It's theirs. So now nobody can say, well, just go look up. Evidently, it's not so easy, as people are finding out. But I am open to evidence for extraterrestrials, Bigfoots, chupacabras, and space stations. Just make sure that they meet our standards. Coyote Smoke and Mirror says, I'm watching the Sum of All Fears. Yeah, well, they were listening to the audiobook of Tom Clancy's Sum of All Fears on the ISS on the day of 9/11, and they looked down in horror. They saw the burning towers from up there in space, and they said, wow, it's just like the book. You can find a video of them doing this in the space station. But yes, Sum of All Fears is probably worth watching. I'm curious as to what it's about as far as the subtext and the nuances, because I think it does contain the ideas of 9/11, but also the collusion between domestic violent extremists and some foreign entity. And I think that's the script for the Turner Diaries future that they have scheduled for us. The white nationalist 9/11 to come, which we're all greatly looking forward to here. Spoiler alerts for the world stage. It's what we offer here. No one here was surprised when Trump got his ear pierced by the AR-15. Although now the FBI is saying that it wasn't an AR-15, that it was shrapnel that got him. They're really trying to downplay it. They really are. And I hope all those trying to downplay Trump's head wound get sued for $1.5 billion like Alex Jones did for downplaying another shooting event. Okay, it is 7/25/2024. We're really about 10 days away from the big day we've all been waiting for, 8/4. So I look forward to that. Tomorrow at 4 p.m. my time, I will be premiering the first hour of the conversation I had, the Bondversation I had this morning, where John the Bond and I talked about Synchronicity, predictive programming, the Trump event, and what we really think about this. Because we have differences of opinions on what it all means or where it's coming from, but I think this conversation will clarify things. So if you want to catch that, it's going to be premiered first on my channel, and then JLB will let the full thing go to his members. We're joined by Brandon, AJ206, Jamitra 101, Osher 06, Elephant Tusks. It says FBI Director Wray is in full auto hoax mode against Trump. Well, what's the reason for it? They want to downplay the martyr status. They saw how he was politicizing it. It's making him a hero. It's turned him into a legend. So they have to downplay it, obviously. And they're working on doing so. And I think it also may detract from any criticism about the veracity of the event itself as described by the media, because a lot of people are calling it a hoax. So they have to drown that out. In fact, this reminds me, Jim Fetzer, talk about cope. Jim Fetzer is having to realize that this event is fake, but he's trying to figure out, well, how can this be fake if Trump's one of the good guys fighting for me? And listen to what he wrote here. Scott Bennett and I review the evidence that Butler was a staged event. There is ample proof of a real assassination attempt in the works, but the Trump campaign learned about it and flipped the script. Better faked than real. Did Trump do the right thing? So in Jim Fetzer's imagination, Donald Trump found out the deep state was coming for him, so he faked an assassination attempt on himself in order to somehow defuse it. Does this make sense to anybody? No. It also doesn't make sense that he can write a book debunking Apollo 11 and subsequent moon landings, but then still thinks the space station is real. This is what happens when you have 1 foot in the matrix, 1 foot on the world stage, and 1 foot off. If you're assessing events with a full awareness of special effects, PR stunts, and how they manipulate media, you shouldn't even be taking anything at face value. Your operating premise for every story should be fake until proven real. Not real unless I can debunk it, because that leaves you in the position of having to deal with cognitive dissonance, and you would arrive at completely erroneous concepts like this. He found out they're trying to assassinate him, so he acted it out. Makes no sense. It's kind of cool in a, I guess, action movie, maybe sort of Netflixy kind of way, but no, it's absurd. T-Dog135 says, my wife asked my kid what a Mandela effect is, and he said it's a group of people who agree to misremember things. Yes, that describes it. A Mandela effect is a group of people who have been gaslit into accepting a wrong answer. They're basically false eyewitnesses. False eyewitness testimony can be generated by an unethical interrogator, and that's essentially what we're looking at here. Oh, that's right. Yeah, the closing music for Sum of All Fear was the song that was playing at the end of the RNC. Kind of suggestive of a revenge plot coming, and that comports with a lot of Q stuff. The Mean Street says, hey Tim, are you over here on a small channel? Why not stream on your big channel? We're on both. I try to send out the biggest signal, so I do have some backup channels that I have this going out on. Just go to ips.monster, and that will take you to the main channel. Lord Laney says, apparently Gerald Ford predicted U.S. would have a first female president after her successor dies. Yeah, that was such a bizarre conversation. If you recall, when Gerald Ford had made this statement that America will have its first female president after, in the future, something about, I think I actually have the quote here, it's 1989, if the male died. I actually found it on Snopes. Let's see how real this claim is. I do recall the exact quote, but I want to know the context. His comments from 1989. He once said he believed the U.S. would have its first female president after her predecessor dies, and she moves into the position via the vice presidency. In July 2024, U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris began campaigning, and this quote spread across social media platforms. Now, I still don't see what's wrong with it. I can play it. Yeah, let's go ahead and play it here.
A young lady at some point become President of the United States. I can tell you how I think it will happen, because it won't happen in the normal course of events. Either the Republican or Democrat political party will nominate a man for president and a woman for vice president. And the woman and man will win. So you'll end up with a president, a male, and a vice president, a female. And in that term of office of the president will die. And the woman will become president.
Okay, clip is genuine. Real footage. Gerald Ford died in 2006, did say he would believe this. So it's a real statement. Enigmatic, strange. I guess we would have to call that predictive in some sense. What does that mean? Very, very interesting. Let's go through my notes. Andrew Tate recorded a sex tape beating a 14-year-old. Oh yeah, that's right. This is old news, but it kind of caught my attention just because this guy's some kind of a hero to the far right, which I think is sort of strange considering how they were against human trafficking. So here you have this human trafficker who's basically saying that he's not guilty of beating this person 10 years ago. Somebody did the math and they figured out that, well, at the time she would have been underage.
In a sexual act with one of my ex-girlfriends.
So the sleuth here goes through and finds the year 2012, 10 years before. Here she is saying no harm, no foul, but her age is concerning.
I just wanted to say something about the video that's been released recently about me and my ex-boyfriend, Andrew Tate. Andrew is my still great friend. What you guys saw in the video, it's just what we used to do. It was just pure game. He's a great guy. He would never hurt anyone.
Anyway, no problem. He would never hurt anyone. However, the math is very concerning. Again, I don't know what to make of this, but apparently Tate is threatening to sue the guy for defamation. I don't know what to make of this, but it just came across my Twitter feed. I have a lot of strange stuff in my Twitter feed. It's pretty scary. Donald Trump said something really strange earlier today as well about how if, quote, they do assassinate President Trump, talking about himself in the third person, which is always a possibility, I hope America obliterates Iran, wipes it off the face of the earth. If that doesn't happen, American leaders will be considered gutless cowards. So here's Donald Trump suggesting on Truth Social that if he does get killed, we have to nuke Iran. So good to know. Okay, let me catch up on some comments. Nicotrauma says Jim Fetzer's a federal agent 100%. It's difficult to tell. I mean, there's some people who are clearly agents, gatekeepers, and not truly in the know. But then there are others who seem to be somewhat insulated from the big picture, and who may not even know. But I don't want to say, oh, he can't figure it out. It's more likely he's an agent than a dupe, and he's guardrailing. But it's really inconsistent, highly inconsistent. Rock East Shepherd said, all the hoaxes are making my brain hurt. Well, the cognitive dissonance, and the brain hurt is coming from the media. Once you just accept that they are liars and you don't expect truth from them anymore, then your brain will cease to hurt. Oh, that's right. Fetzer talked with Whitsitt about cosmology. Yeah, that's right. He's totally anti-flat Earth, which, again, that was kind of an attitude, a reflexive attitude that a lot of triggered 9/11 truther, cloud shouter types were mad at because they felt like our conspiracy theories are legitimate. This makes us look crazy. And they're always super concerned about looking crazy to the mainstream, which is kind of, I think, naive, because they will never accept you. The mainstream media will always look at the alternative media as crazy until they totally conform. So there's no idea that's crazier to them than any other. You're basically all flat earth Nazis the instant you cease agreeing with them. Why try to curry favor? Just break away altogether, which is what we are doing. Okay, moving on here. Season 3 of The Apprentice jumped the shark, says Elephant Tusks. Oh yes, I agree. Season 34 is what I think we're in. And I think that at this point, I'm not sure why they're pushing back on the ear thing. I think it might be to drown out this fakery, because you have pretty mainstream people. I mean, Jim Fetzer calling it fake, that carries a little bit of weight. The reason why I still don't know 100% where he stands is that he's been pretty much targeted for censorship. His publishing company was destroyed by the Sandy Hook group, and he's still trying to sue them. He's still trying to open up their case, but I don't know. Again, I'm not quite sure. We're still waiting on that one. It's out. This morning I talked to JLB about a lot of things, mostly having to do with the concept of news bending. So again, you'll want to subscribe to my newsletter at ips.monster below so you don't miss that tomorrow. That's the 4th time, by the way, my 4th appearance on the Bonversations. Alex Jones, as we all know, in addition to being a gatekeeper, is visually illiterate. And this is the problem with non-auto-hoaxers. If you're not auto-hoaxing, you're not a dependable eyewitness. You're not a credible witness. You're not really paying attention. So for example, here's a video circulating that shows a frame by frame of the bullet and Trump's ear getting the hole punched in it. So Alex Jones shared this video, which I debunked more than a week ago. He says, you can see the bullet hole appear frame by frame. No, you can't. This is fake. I knew it was fake when I first saw it, but it's been confirmed as a fake. And so that there are people asking, well, why is he sharing it? Why is he sharing it with this? Brent Lee says, he posted the fake video because he's a charlatan and he thinks his audience is gullible. So what do you think? Does he think they're gullible, or is he gullible? I think it's more likely he is. Or perhaps he is playing the fool on this one. I'm not even sure. Sometimes he just seems to be S-posting and fear-mongering, but you also have to consider that his position within the Sandy H. PSYOP would suggest that he's a deep insider. You have to remember, too, he's not a victim. He's not a victim of the government trying to stop a truth teller. That's all just a ruse. He is the government. I'm surprised that people are still falling for any of this, to be honest. Bach Precision says, what's your opinion on why their hoaxes decline in quality? Or were they always this bad and we leveled up as a target audience? Back in 2017, a lot of hopium addicts were saying to me, oh, the reason why their hoaxes are so bad is because they want you to know that they know that you know, and that they're trying to wake us up, but they can't wake us up all at once. So you're special because you figured it out in advance. I heard that from so many people, and I thought, what the crap is this? That they're trying to let us know. It's like, no, your psychologically abusive mass media doesn't secretly love you. It's not trying to, quote, wake you up. It's mind war against you. Some people are just so, I guess, full of hope that everyone's going to, quote, wake up, which is ridiculous in itself. No, they're not going to wake up. They're enjoying the dream. But when it comes to the hoax quality, it's actually improved. If you look back at previous hoaxes, they've been improving. 9/11 didn't age well. Apollo 11 hasn't aged well, and they have improved in a few different areas. I've noticed that they're not as brazen with their actors, where their actors used to be very effective. Just have somebody run in front of the camera, tell a story, people believe it. Now they seem to be a little more reserved and reticent when it comes to showing us crisis actors. It's like they don't want to give us anything to chew on. And I understand it's smart. But no, I don't think that they're getting worse. I think we're getting better. But there's an issue with this as well. There's two types of media critics that I frequently see, and only one is valid. One of them is the low information disbeliever. It's mainstream. I just don't believe it. Oh, they're lying. It's a psyop. It looks fake. Oh, that shooting was obviously fake. No, it wasn't. You can't go to a magic show like David Blaine and sit in the audience and say, oh, it's obviously fake. Well, no, it's not fake. You physically cannot deconstruct it from where you're sitting. It's an optical illusion. When you see the Trump shooting, you might have an opinion it looks fake, but how would you objectively describe its qualities that make it fake? There really aren't any. You have to look at the big picture, the gestalt, all the different factors. There's not enough information to say it's fake. So to just say it's fake without supplying reasons makes you a low information non-believer. And low info non-believers don't qualify as skeptics because they're prematurely judging it fake. And skepticism requires suspension of judgment. So the knee-jerk, reactionary, everything's fake crowd are not skeptics. They're not in our club. They're just as bad as the low information believers who believe whatever they see on the screen, who instantly decide it's true. So you can't instantly say, oh, it's true or it's fake. Nope, you have to take time. If you're not waiting, then you must have some special insights that none of us here do. But in contrast to the low info disbeliever is the informed non-believer. I know why I don't believe in this. I know why it's fake. I know why there's no reason I should believe it. And to come to a comprehensive explanation requires a full understanding of what media actually is and what it is not. And that's really ground zero. And someone like Jim Fetzer might still be operating from the perspective that the mainstream media is actually a bunch of reporters with cameras and microphones recording stuff and telling us about it. No, they're not informing you. They're conforming you. Big difference. They're conforming you to a prefabricated story. And until you understand that the media is part of the production of the event, creating the simulation, you're always going to be fooled. You're always going to be chasing second shooters, chasing stinky red herrings, running laps around big obvious fake trees in a forest of fakery, not noticing that everything is fake. Going through some comments. Nicotrauma says Bill Hicks is a deep insider. 1,000,000%. Isabel N says I found a mug on the street with the ISS. Pretty awesome sync. Well, that's the only ISS that anybody has found. No one was able to film it. There were some people who tried, but no one was able to catch it for its entirety or to really make a confident claim that what they saw was indeed in outer space. So the observation was a success. Multiple people tried. The fact that we didn't see anything does not invalidate our observations. It just means at some point, maybe we'll try again. I mean, I'm not all that interested in being a propaganda mule, a NASA advocate. I'm not taking anyone's burden of proof. So if you're still a believer in cryptids or spaceships, it's on you to convince the rest of us. We just now have a little more leverage to reject certain arguments. Like there is this argument people make, well, there's a light in the sky. We don't know what it is. I don't believe in spaceships, so it's not that, but it's a light. No, you don't get to introduce an unknown light. This isn't ufology. In fact, ufology wouldn't exist if people had our standards of evidence. We have this new auto-hoax axiom, which I have to put into a blog post, which basically states any moving light in the sky should be considered an airplane before anything else. You have to rule it out as an airplane, because what else would it possibly be? I mean, maybe a helicopter, but in other words, you have to rule out the mundane first. The noise you heard when you were camping, yeah, that was a deer, maybe a squirrel. Rule that out before you start trying to convince us it was Sasquatch. By the way, I was listening to McToon last night debating somebody about the moon landing, and it was very effective. McToon is kind of a clown. He's like a Batman Gotham villain. He kind of, when he loses his cool, he kind of reminds me of Christopher Lloyd in that Who Framed Roger Rabbit, when he takes out his eyes and he's got these spiraling cartoon eyes and he goes crazy. That's McToon. He kept losing it, but the other guy was just saying that there's this movie called, I have to find it. It's something Smoke and Mirrors. I'll see if I can pull it up. It's a 2-hour documentary, but he was referencing special effects. And he was basically arguing that in order to understand how the moon landing was performed, you have to look at special effects, movie effects that could replicate these things. And I've noticed this with many of these individuals. They don't even want to think about smoke and mirrors, about hoaxes, about special effects. They just want to argue it on the basis of science, and that it's all about mathematics, and we can trust the science, and we can treat all their flight logs and their photography as scientific evidence. They don't even question the evidence at its basis. And so what they don't get into, what they don't really know about, is fakeability. So what I liked about this particular debate is that the person arguing against the moon landing was presenting ways that such things could be faked. It's sort of getting McToon to admit, okay, it's theoretically fakeable, which is progress. But I would never debate someone like that. I was invited by Fight the Flat Earth to debate, but the issue with it is that these individuals believe everything in the news. That's a problem. If they believe everything in the news, they don't know what media is. They don't know what worldview is. They conflate worldview with the actual world that we live upon, and you have people living in this hive mind bubble reality where anything is possible, only limited by public credulity. And these days they'll believe anything. But to me, it's more about epistemology, how we process information, how we come to believe what we believe, and worldview. It's not just geography. And there's no point in arguing with them about this because they don't have the frame of reference to understand that they could possibly be accepting a whole lot of fraudulent scientific information or scientific data. Like, no, it's not science. Physics didn't get us to the moon. Science didn't get us to the moon. Movie magic did. But again, they're not psyop aware, and that's fine. I'm not here to convince people of anything. In fact, I'm only interested in aggregating the people who've already deprogrammed. I'm leaving the programmed to the programming. We're observing them. Al Newfall says, Tim, what do you think the proof that the other planets look sphere, given them account that this planet we call Earth is the same as the other planets? I think I know what you're saying. People will say, every other planet is a perfect sphere. Why wouldn't the Earth be? And a couple of things. One, the Earth is an oblate spheroid. It's shaped like a pumpkin. It's fat in the middle. It's not a perfect sphere. So it's kind of unusual that none of the planets and none of the exoplanets, as have been presented by the space agencies, are anything but perfect spheres. So I would rather ask you, where are the oblate spheroids? Find me one oblate spheroid in space. I'll be waiting. The other thing is, I'm not even convinced that the Earth is a discrete object floating in some endless abyss of, quote, emptiness, of space. If the worldview we've been given isn't as curved as they say, then we don't have to automatically operate with the presupposition that there is space beneath us. We're, in all likelihood, in my view, on the bottom of it. But I don't even believe in the Earth, much less a flat Earth or a globe Earth. I'm so agnostic about it that I don't have enough information to conclude a model as far as geographical and how far it goes, or as far as cosmology. But I do think it's not premature to understand your worldview, which is a more relevant model. Like, it's far more relevant to consider how you see the world than what it looks like from a million miles away, if such a view is even possible. And what I mean is, if your entire worldview is framed by a government filter, you're going to have a different experience here than someone who has deprogrammed. I had a few statements about this when I was talking to JLB this morning when I was discussing what I call the augmented reality. Like lie augmented. So here I am, a total agnostic about most of what they propagate through media. But the person next to me, and if at random I just pick someone on the street, this would be true. The person next to me believes that he could possibly, or she could possibly, be crushed by space junk, be annihilated by a nuclear bomb, abducted by aliens, could be impacted by climate change, or could possibly be killed by, any number of weapons of mass destruction. But I don't live in their world. So their world has all these other conditions that mine does not. Their world also consists of a place where angry, right-wing, discord, radicalized, bowl-cut shooters are murdering children in schools on a routine basis. It's epidemic in their view. So if you compare the two, myself and the random person lives in a much scarier world than mine. I'm not the one in a doomsday cult. I'm not a NASAtologist. I don't believe what the priests of scientism on the screen tell me. So I live in a very peaceful world, much different, unaugmented. Catching up on some comments, Deprogram says, Tim, did you end up making up with Upside Down Guy? Yeah, Upside Down Guy wanted to call in and kind of spitball ideas for some kind of fan fiction, erotica. It sounded like he was leaning toward erotica, trying to introduce myself and Goldfinch in some bizarre scenario, and I hung up on him a couple of times. I should have just taken the call and suggested, try Chat GPT. If you're trying to write fiction. I don't know where he was going with it. I'm sure there was a punchline in there somewhere, but I ran out of patience. As far as I know, we're on good terms, but he does seem to be awfully defensive of the space station, and some people are. You start saying there's no such thing as a space station, and a lot of people get triggered. They're not as bad as the chemtrail crowd. The chemtrail huffers, you tell them there's no chemtrails, and they'll accuse you of fostering deadly ignorance. Now more people are going to die of chemtrail lung because you're not raising awareness. You're gatekeeping chemtrails. Commenter says, okay, if it isn't a discrete object floating in space, what are the planets and where are they? Okay, if the Earth is not a discrete object floating in space, if the Earth doesn't exist as they describe it, then whatever's above us isn't the distance they say. So you can rule out 93 million miles away from the sun. And that eliminates a lot of the confusion where they'll say, well, if the Earth isn't a ball, everything would be lit at once. No, not so. We're doing away with your concept of the sun and the scale of everything, which means that now the Earth, the plane, would be, in all likelihood, the larger, quote, object. That everything above would be smaller, maybe not dwarfed. I don't know how big these things would have to be, but you would remove the distances at a minimum. And you might also have to start considering all of them to be on a plane. And I don't have a perfect concept of how it all works, but I'm just removing all of the assumptions programmed by NASA's model, the spinning balls falling through space in a meaningless, dead corpse rotting universe grinding to a halt. And here we are, just evolved apes trying to make sense of the meaninglessness by inventing meaning and inventing something higher when no, there's nothing. Like, that's one version. But I think the universe is, whatever we call the universe, I think this place is intrinsically built out of meaning, out of information and meaningful correspondence and the perception of it. And I don't think the universe even exists until we experience it. So there's this concept of it as a static thing. It exists, big, vast space, objects floating around, and we're on this object that's eventually going to fall into the sun or get killed by a planet killer asteroid. So we have this idea that the universe exists, and I kind of dispute that. I'm not convinced that it does exist. So I might not be the right person to ask. You're asking about the shape of the world, and I'm really more about worldview, and from the perspective of what I think might be a type of, I guess, soul-body split or dichotomy. I think that there may be some reason to think that maybe shape is immaterial. Maybe it's more about our user experience. And our user experience is screwed up from the beginning because we're pressed up against the screen from the get-go. Our whole existence is filtered through somebody else's lies. Commenter says, I'm not using NASA stuff, I'm just using the things we can see with the naked eye. Sure. I mean, I find a lot of it curious. Here's something I would like to know, if you could explain to me, because I'm slightly confused about this. Explain to me the tidally locked moon. So it's tidally locked, and yet it rotates once every 27 days, over the course of 27 days. But they say we never see the other side of it because of synchronous rotation. So how does synchronous rotation comport with being tidally locked? It seems to me these would be mutually exclusive. Nicotrama says, I thought Upside Down Guy was an ally of the IPS. I don't know what his deal is. He might be an ally of the IPS. I'm not really sure. I always thought that he was probably just a far alt-right S-poster from Telegram based on some of his verbiage, rhetoric, and stuff like that. But he is awfully defensive of the ISS, is all I'm saying, for someone who's never seen it. Okay, continuing. Portal says they convince you that satellites are Big Brother's angels watching your every move. Yeah, a lot of people lie reflexively. In fact, I have a manuscript I'm still developing. I was working on it today. I won't leak the title, but I'm building on my idea or concept of the lie world order structure and how it makes liars out of everybody. And if you can't admit that you can be duped, that you can be misled, and therefore you can carry misinformation and become a liar by proxy, by osmosis, if you can't admit that you're a liar, you're never going to become a more honest person when it comes to what we're talking about here. And a lot of people lie without realizing it because they have absorbed bad arguments for a lack of, maybe it's just a lack of understanding about how easy it is to slip bad ideas in behind logical fallacies. And this is where Trutherville really falls short of arriving at the truth. And I'm looking at this book as a way to describe the different categories of liars that we are. Are you an unwitting liar? A witting liar? Are you telling white lies? Is it lies to conform? And the word lie, a lot of people, they're just like, that's too strong. It's not too strong. Not if we're trying to get to the truth of things. And the media makes you a liar when you repeat their lies. Now, you may not be as bad as them because you're not consciously and deliberately spreading lies, but you are a liar in that sense. So I'm looking at it from this perspective of, as we move into this quarantine, this parallel media of we have to reject certain claims so that we don't unwittingly spread untruths and misinformation. Okay, continuing. Plain Decoded says, getting conned and realizing it can be turned into a life skill. Well, one of the issues a lot of people have is they're not willing to admit that they can be duped or that they are tricked. And, you know, we a lot of us encounter this just by questioning NASA's claims. And these claims, you question them, and some people who believe in them feel like they're being personally attacked. Like, no, we landed on the moon. We? No, you were at home watching everything on TV, as with everything else. You know, we. And there is this tendency of people to want to lie and include themselves in things. I read about this phenomenon, and it was called the 9/11 sign. And the 9/11 sign referred to this phenomenon where people would claim that they were somehow a part of the story. So here's an example, or a definition. Fake stories of heroism and grief became so common in the aftermath of the terror attacks on the Twin Towers, it became known as the 9/11 sign. Fake 9/11 survivors, the fantasists who pretended to be there. I used to have callers who would routinely call in and say, I know somebody who was there. A friend of mine was a jumper. I saw him on TV. And I would ask them, what are their names? And every single one of these callers would say, oh, I don't know. I don't want to tell you. Oh, you don't want to honor the victim? I had one person agree to give me initials. They couldn't even get that right. But what do you call them? Liars. And we have to be comfortable calling liars liars. Now, why are they lying? To fit in. Religious people lie to themselves and to others all the time. It's no different with the state and its contemporary myths. And you get approval for lying. The Mandela effect club that someone referenced here, the Mandela affected are lying to themselves. And they don't like this being pointed out. But all right, we've had more than 100 comments so far. Very busy in the chat. Isabel Ann says, your subconscious doesn't understand the difference between real and fake. The cult understands this and uses their programs and magic to trick people into victimhood. Yes, and I think this also pertains to predictive programming in general. You're just absorbing entertainment, which I would actually describe as entrainment. The entertainment is mind entrainment to the news cycles. And you're being programmed with images of headshots of Trump dying, of Trump-like characters dying. And we're so saturated with it that if you're heavily involved in anything online or even in person, you're just walking around the world, it's so immersive, you're going to encounter this stuff. And so all this stuff is going into your subconscious, and it's being acted on later. And it seems to me, too, that it doesn't need your permission. JLB and I were talking about Fallout and the scene with the blood spot on the Trump figurine's head. And he pointed out, and I didn't notice this, but immediately after it goes to an image of a dead president. But the scene goes by so fast, and there's no description as far as there's no narrator. It's just images going into your head. And if you weren't consciously deliberating over every frame as I was, in all likelihood, you would have missed it. But that doesn't mean that you missed it entirely. It means that you consciously missed it, but subconsciously it's there. And what we're doing here is just raising our awareness about what they are data dumping into our subconscious minds. I think this might be one of the meanings of Kubrick's title, Eyes Wide Shut, that our subconscious mind is just this voiceless receptacle that just has no say in what it takes in. And of course, it is operating 24/7, whether or not you're aware of it. Jake the A-hole says, after every fake shooting, somebody knows somebody who was there, and they just happen to go up and show up to mine and Tim's stream to let us know. What are the odds? Yeah, my favorite one was the Nice terror attack where they were dumping rubber dolls out in the road behind a van. And they're like, oh yeah, it was a Allah Akbar attack on a Christmas parade or something, or some kind of outdoor Christmas shopping event. And I'm in my live stream with 30 people watching, and I'm like, yeah, these are rubber dolls. And some guy in there is like, that's my girlfriend, how dare you? I'm like, okay, why aren't you in the hospital with your girlfriend who just got ran over in a terror attack? You should be holding her hand and praying with her or praying over her, something. But no, you're on YouTube, mad at some guy on the other side of the world who says that it's fake. They used to flood the chat rooms with this stuff, and the whole point of it was to guilt trip you into not calling fake fake. And I'm completely irreverent. Fake dead kids' lives don't matter. And I actually had pushback. I had someone say to me, you shouldn't say fake dead kids' lives don't matter because it's very offensive. And I'm like, okay, well, which fake dead kids' lives matter? Name one. They couldn't come up with an answer. They didn't like what I was saying. It's like, you're going to take time out of your day to tell me not to say fake dead kids' lives don't matter, but you're not going to take the time to criticize the fake news for using fake dead kids to traumatize real kids. Look at all the hyper-realistic school shooting drills. Pure trauma-induced mind control done under the presupposition that these shootings are real and therefore these drills are necessary. So if we don't call out the fake stuff, it justifies actions by the state. So if anyone has the moral high ground, it's the skeptics, not the ones who are worried about our rhetoric and our irreverence. Nicotramas Super Chat, thank you for continuing to preach the truth, Tim. Thank you very much for the gas in the tank. Very generous, appreciate it. Could not do without. That's one of the things I was talking to JLB about today. The last time we spoke was 6 months ago, And 6 months ago, things were pretty shaky. But 6 months ago, we got remonetized on YouTube. And that has allowed me to continue. That's why we're generally here 5-6 nights a week. And it would be much more if I could make it happen. I mean, soon I will. Timothy Ryan says that Corey Comperature character that allegedly died at the Trump event never existed. There's some fishy stuff about that particular story. And when people say it's staged, they have to be willing to accept that when this thing is staged, it's everybody there in behind Trump. It's largely a closed scene. You can't say everybody there. There had to have been some legitimate witnesses, I think, because how this would work with a closed set is far different from how it would work when it's open to the public. But I think it's safe to say the people behind Trump, like the guy in the JFK Jr. hobo costume, that guy's obviously an insider. In fact, a lot of the people behind Trump were acting unusual, and many thought this was an indication that they were part of the plot. Oh, like this person is signaling to that person. Well, they're all actors. They're going through a scripted routine. None of that was accidental. The clown show with the Secret Service agents, how many people fell for that? How many, quote, truthers with zero discernment are out there saying, oh, well, Trump was put in danger by these DEI hires? Like you were fed that line by people like Dan Bongino or Jack Posobiec or Stu Peters, any of these right-wing S-posters who are given basically bombs to throw in the info war, and you're going to run with that. Well, the thing is, if you're talking about the DEI Secret Service agents or the second shooter on the tower or any of these other spin-off stories, then you're missing the essential point that it was fake, nobody died, there are no patsies. But they want you to go deep into this big story. The unmediated mind says that's key point, Isabel Ann, your subconscious is the target. Yeah, never forget the co-founder, first CEO of Netflix was related to Edward Bernays and Sigmund Freud. They're not asking your permission. We're pretty much an open book. I believe Netflix purchased all of our DMs and browser histories related to Facebook. But one other point too, because someone like Jim Fetzer, he sees it's fake, but he can't process it. He's like, how can it be fake? Everything else is real. Oh, I get it. Trump had to fake it, so they didn't do it for real because he found out they were going to do it for real, so he faked it. That's a huge leap. The truth of it is, both sides are complicit in every psyop. The sides are an illusion. If Donald Trump is an insider and Alex Jones is an insider to January 6th, which they would have to be. This goes for a lot of these characters. They would have to be insiders to the fact that January 6th was a simulated, not a stimulated riot. It wasn't provoked by feds. The whole thing was feds. It was all actors. There's a lot of evidence that supports this, that the staged riots began before Trump's speech even ended. But if Jones and Trump and others were insiders on that, then why would it be any different with this shooting? Why would they kill Trump if he helped fake an insurrection to honeypot American nationalists and brand them as some kind of domestic extremists, with this whole MAGA ban, QAnon stuff? Like, they're part of this Judas Goat operation. There's no way that they're a threat to the system. So the assassination scene itself is preposterous. Like, there is no deep state versus Trump. Trump is the deep state, and there is no shallow state. It's all deep. Commenter says, it's funny that the left, besides the auto hoaxers, are the only ones calling it fake. Yeah, that's pretty funny. That is kind of interesting to think about, too. That you have some leftists who are like, oh, no, he wasn't shot, it was shrapnel. They're downplaying it. They're willing to auto hoax it, but they're doing so for purely political reasons. And they're willing to entertain that Trump would fake such a thing for sympathy. But they're doing so cynically, not skeptically. So while I appreciate them, in a sense, for at least I don't know, breaking their spell enough to call something fake, but no, it's not coming from the right place. We will not accept any auto hoaxers from Woketown because they will not see the big picture. But yeah, I find it to be amusing. Jake the A-hole says, did you know Jeranism claims Ashley Babbitt died? He's not allowed to say she isn't dead. Okay, somebody has Jaron. Somebody has him under their thumb. He has got to be compromised. He's controlled. He's an asset. Not only did he fake ISS transits multiple times, but if he's going to say Ashley Babbitt died, maybe he's not allowed to go against the guardrail MSM Plus InfoWars friendly narrative, because InfoWars represents the counter narrative that's approved by the state. And you do find a lot of these big channels aren't allowed to say fake. They're not allowed to go this far. And I could care less about somebody's cosmography or their opinions on the shape of the world if they don't understand how worldview is being maligned and molded by the ubiquitous media. I mean, deep inside the rabbit's hole was on InfoWars, Flat Earth Dave, aka Fed. And he's talking to Alex Jones about the Earth being flat. And Jones is like, well, let's talk about Trump for a minute. And Dearth is like, oh, I don't really care about politics. Well, these are one and the same. It's worldview. It's an entire concept of the world and our place in it and all the different factors and everything combined into one. It's not as simple.
New Kofi shop sale from Ashi.
It's not as simple as shape. It's not about flat or round. It's about open or closed systems. But anyway, it's a very blinkered perspective. If you're flat Earth only, I don't know how you can exist in this world. It's just so incoherent. But it's a good grift, I suppose, if you're selling apps. But Jones wasn't convinced, and Jones and others, though, when pushed, what oftentimes you'll see is they will say, well, if this is fake and this is fake, well, maybe it's a simulation. Like even David Icke. Well, what does it matter if it's flat or round? It could be any shape. It's all what we perceive. And that kind of goes too far. It's like, what about we don't have enough information to arrive at anything conclusive, so we have to do an investigation. But we don't have anything to add to the conversation without doing a deep exploration or going to the source of the lies and questioning their materials. And I don't see anybody making any kind of legitimate attempt to discredit the ISS live footage or the actors who are on it right now. They'll talk about the moon landing, where the actors and all the individuals involved in the hoax are pretty much dead or on their way out. It's like, let's talk about something from this century. Thank you from Ashy. Purchased a copy, I believe, of Auto Hoaxology 101. If you go to Ko-Fi, you can order copies signed, paperback, Auto Hoaxology 101. That's my next major objective here, is to really promote this thing, because this book condenses all of our most important ideas and axioms into a I would say a philosophical framework and a methodology. God Was Bored says, I know people who were skeptical about 713 until the convention. Then they were saved how they said he was saved, and their skeptical thinking went out the door. They want to believe. They want to believe. It gives them a moral high ground. God intervened. Ephesians 6:11. It ties in with this whole Christification thing. They want to believe, and their cognitive dissonance won't let them believe that Trump did a magic trick and fooled the world, but that he necessarily would have had to have done so with the aid of the entire media, itself. Like, it's not just Fox and right-wing media. We're talking left, right, all government-controlled media. There's only one government. I mean, prove me wrong on this. We have a monolithic worldview shaping mechanism that, despite having many different networks and companies, despite all these differences, it's still uniform when it comes to worldview, when it comes to what they augment the collective worldview with. Then they all share spaces up on the International Space Station. So that tells you that they're colluding. They're colluding above, they're colluding below, with the Antarctic Treaty. There are some points of agreement between all of these so-called nations and countries that would suggest that maybe it's really more about the few controlling the billions. Not groups of hundreds of millions versus groups of hundreds of millions, and we're all in these competing sectors. No. It's a small group of programmers relative to the programmed. And the programmers are even themselves programmed and only deprogrammed to the extent they need to be to run their specific op. So for example, the space fakers would be pretty well aware of everything else that's fake, but the actors who participate in fake school shootings wouldn't necessarily know about the space fakery. So the programmers are in a compartmentalized sector of this thing. The programmed are in a big box. The deprogrammed, which would be us, are very few, and we're just now beginning to aggregate outside of their system, their closed system. God Was Bored says their cognitive dissonance won't allow them to not vote. Yeah, I had said last year, and even this year, I said, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden because I don't believe in voting. It's all a charade. That's not an exaggeration. That's not hyperbole. I'm not being cynical. I'm just being factual. They write our history in advance. Like, you don't have any say in this thing. However, I'm voting for Biden because Trutherville is going to lockstep vote for whoever the GOP puts in front of them. So I want to protest against their automatic behavior. And if any of them say, no, you can't vote for Biden, we got to beat the deep state, I can say, oh, you're claiming that voting makes a difference? You're saying that the GOP managed to co-opt all the free thinkers who are into conspiracy theories and just turned them into regular run-of-the-mill right-wingers? Because that's what it looks like. So no, I'm going to be voting for now Harris, apparently. I'm going to vote for Kamala Harris as a protest vote against Trutherville. Oh, interesting update here. Jake the A-hole says, Eric Dubay has come back now with 200,000 subs. How is that possible? If you're not allowed to evade a YouTube ban. They're letting a lot of these big flat earth channels back on. I believe they, I thought I heard a creaking casket somewhere. I think they exhumed Patty Steer and then Mark Sargent, and they're back. I'm like, okay, what is going on here? There's some reality TV show happening where they're paying a bunch of flat earthers to make the case, and there's some kind of final experiment happening in December in Antarctica. But if they're not talking about fake news, fabricated, simulated news events performed by both parties, at least both parties signing off on it at the very top, if they're not talking about worldview warfare, I could care less about their opinions about cartography of the shape of the world. God Was Bored said, how do they prevent regular people from attending staged events? That's a good question. And you have to look at the closed versus open sets first of all. Some are going to have a mix, and there would have to be a lot of control over this, obviously, and we can look at it on a case-to-case basis, like the Boston bombing. Not a coincidence it happened near the end of the race, when most of the people would have passed by. When it comes to something like the Vegas event, they were clearing people out, and there was somebody who wasn't a part of it, who was walking around seeing if anybody needed help, and everybody said, no, everyone's dead, just leave. They were practically shoving him out of the area. And the security guard was at the gate saying, you need to leave. And he said, well, shouldn't you get some paramedics? There's a lot of people in here who've been shot. And the security guard shuts off the stadium lights, and they're like, no, everybody's already dead. Go home. So we got that video and looked at it, and it seemed to me that, no, it was a closed set. And the actors were doing their drill, which they had obviously rehearsed. And no, these are closed movie sets. But how do they prevent regular people? I think it would be the same as with any kind of, it's a combination between guerrilla film making and a flash mob. And I think there's something that we could take as an example here, Kenosha. If you recall, before Kyle Rittenhouse did his little scene where he shot the pedo, the strangler, and the commie, they have this scene where he's approached by some police officers who hand him a bottle of water. And they're like, yeah, we're going to send him down this way. which sounds weird. What do you mean we're going to send him down this way to the 15-year-old with the AR-15? No, 17-year-old who was at a Trump rally with a white hat. So there's all kinds of clues here how staged this thing is. But the police officers gave him water and said something. And I thought, well, that could have been a sign. Like in other words, if the coast is clear, and the FBI admittedly had drones over the scene the entire time, it could be something like, we're going to go live with this, we're going to do the operation if the coast is clear. But they can't just say, okay, coast is clear, run the drill. But they could pass out water bottles to key personnel. So I think they might have some kind of internal signaling language with these events to maintain it. But again, it's going to be on a case-to-case basis how they pull these things off. I mean, it's fascinating to study this. Jake the A-hole says, yes, Tim, the reboot of Flat Earth is based around Will Duffy's final experiment. I'll be exposing the whole thing. Okay, good to know. I knew there was something going on at Flat Earth. It's like they're bringing this back. And I believe David Weiss is about to go on the Joe Rogan show. Timothy Ryan says, Dubé is satanic. Same with Pat Steer and the others. Yeah, I've been told that I'm one too. We're all Satanists or something. It's so bizarre. I got someone complaining about my phone number. And this is the old phone number. Let me go ahead and pull that up. Let's go ahead and address this. Do I need to change it? Arito said, your phone number has 4226. 4 plus 2 is 6. And then 6 is 2 sixes, or 66. So your 4226 is 666. What's up, bro? Is this just a fluke? I'm starting to wonder about you. Hope you're not a weirdo. Keep up the good work. Okay, so the guy who sees a 666 and 4226 hopes that I'm not a weirdo. All right then. Like every number, I should just stop using 6s and 2s and 4s, just odd numbers. Like what numbers aren't satanic? Everything is satanic. Plain Dakota says Nathan Oakley has been bashing Jaron and Weiss in the stupid experiment. Yeah, well, I don't have any problem with the experiments. I don't have problems with observations. Truth should fear no investigation. There should be no insecurities about what's going to happen if somebody goes and observes and looks for a 24-hour sun. I would love to be proven wrong on anything. Like, please, prove me wrong. Show me a spaceship. Show me a pile of not fake dead people as a result of some obviously staged event. Like, show me some evidence. I'll be happy to reverse engineer how I got the information wrong or how I misinterpreted it. But we haven't been wrong yet. Nicotrauma says that was a hilarious complaint. Oh, this guy complains a lot. Like, is there like a list of numbers that are approved for Christians? Like, they don't want to dial the number because if they dial 666, the devil will come by. Anyway, same commenter has a good comment here. He says, the 9/11 photo of Bush getting whispered in the ear. Look at the photo behind Bush. The blackboard has written on it, makes a country great. Okay, I'll try to find that photo. We've been talking about that particular photo where Bush is having the news of 9/11 whispered in his ear because it's the same photographer who photographed the bullet whizzing by Trump's ear. In fact, I came across something else today too. Oh yes, this is really good. So we've been talking about the predictive programming in the movie Machete. So Machete 2010 comes out, where an illegal immigrant shoots a xenophobic senator played by Robert De Niro. And we looked at this is Robert De Niro as President Trump. And the thing is, and this is an indication that we're correct in our assessment here, the movie came out in 2010, and it had a Trump-liked politician making xenophobic comments, and this is 6 years before Trump was president. So this is 5 years before he had any kind of rhetoric like that. So pre-existing Trump, they had Trump predictive programming for the role he would eventually fulfill. And it gets very specific because Machete pulls the trigger just as De Niro's character is talking about immigrants in a very negative way, about the invasion, about it being a poison, everything Trump has said. But what's more is Trump was shot in the ear just as he was pointing out his sign that had a chart that showed how illegal immigrants had been increasing and the damage they do to the economy, etc. So he's talking about illegal immigrants when he gets shot. So it mirrors the movie. Well, there's more. This came out today. Apparently, the shooter was on Gab. This is from WorldNet Daily, and he says left-wing domestic terrorism Trump shooter was on a popular social site and was apparently pro-Biden. So he was on Gab. But look what it says here. They publish evidence making very apparent that Crooks was left-wing and hated Trump's immigration policies, noting that the shooter fired on President Trump when he started talking about these policies. So they're even noting that this guy's motivation was Trump's border policies and his anti-immigrant status, and that's when he pulled the trigger. Again, this mirrors a movie from 14 years ago, and Trump wasn't even a politician 14 years ago. And how did we find this? Because we know how to reverse engineer their scripts. And when we saw Robert De Niro outside of the Trump courthouse, we knew that his previous roles were being subconsciously evoked. They were bringing some information. They were bringing some kind of archetype or some narratives to the foreground. And his other characters include Travis Bickle from Taxi Driver, the movie that inspired an assassination attempt on Reagan. And, of course, as we often talk about, the Joker movies based on Taxi Driver. De Niro gets shot by Joker, who would represent Travis Bickle. I mean, it's pretty fascinating to go back and reverse engineer and find predictive programming based on what we're seeing on the screen right at that moment, and knowing with certainty you're going to find it, which we have been doing. Uninitiated said, even if there are people in the audience who aren't aware of the hoax, they can be influenced by those around them to believe in the hysteria. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And this is the case with a lot of these psyops. Like, I've seen some examples, like the James Holmes shooting in the movie theater. That was done late at night. So they try to limit the number of people who would be there. But it's plausible that some people could be in the area, but what are they going to hear? And I think there's something else too. We've noticed that a lot of the participants in these events tend to be wearing lanyards or carrying water bottles. You also have to remember, you're dealing with a large group of people who've been doing drills together. They know each other. In fact, there's a Woo's News breakdown of the January 6th event. I think it's the second part, where he's showing that there were some people who obviously weren't in on it, and they were trying to figure out, what are these guys marching for? Where are they going to the Capitol? And they were being outgrouped quickly. And it was pretty obvious that they weren't part of the operation, and the people that were keeping their distance, keeping them from marching with them. Timothy Ryan says, I was on a live stream last night, and the number was 666-1984 is fakeologist. That's suspect. Now, what does it mean? Does it mean that fakeologist is an adrenochrome junkie? Or is he a Satanist? And let's say fakeologist is a Satanist. Why would he put 666 on his phone number? Like, why would he tell you that he's a blood-drinking satanic vampire? Like, I find it highly unlikely that the bad guys label themselves so easily. Ted Stryker says, how can numbers be satanic if Satan doesn't exist? Right? Isn't that one of the greatest tricks that Satan ever played, was convincing us he didn't exist? Who said that? Some statement like, the greatest trick Who said that? Okay, here we go. The greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world that he didn't exist. I'm trying to figure out who originally said it. If I can't find out who said it, I generally just say Plato. But this is also something else I want to point out. The Satan phobia only exists on the right. Why is that? How come the left-wingers aren't afraid of Satan, but the right-wingers are scared of Satan. How come the left wing wants to embrace aliens? They're like, we believe, abduct us. But the right wing is like, aliens are demons, and they make secret deals with the government. Tucker Carlson's been saying this for months. It's because the right wing is conditioned to fear government and to fear Satan, whereas the left wing embraces government and doesn't believe in Satan. And that's because they have this perfect split down the middle where they have the traditional Make America Great Again refers to this, the nostalgic past, idealized past, with traditional concepts of sin, good and evil, Bible-based worldview. And the left wing has moved into nascentology, future utopianism. So it's a glorified or utopian future versus this idealized past. And in this future, they've replaced certain archaic concepts. So they no longer believe in Satan or angry Jehovah who will flood the world. They don't believe in the biblical stuff, but they've adopted compatible parallel beliefs. So the New World believes in the virus as a replacement for sin. They believe in Gaia as a replacement for Jehovah flooding the world because of our wickedness. They've replaced the concepts of angels with aliens. Space is the new heaven that atheists will believe in. So I'm just saying that if you believe in this, oh, it's Satan, you're just as bad as the other side. Because this is, again, it's part of their deliberate split. I mean, unless I'm wrong. I mean, if Satan exists, let me know. But as far as I'm concerned, it's part of this worldview warfare where they want traditional, past-oriented minds and worldviews that hold on to the past to clash with the utopians, left versus right. Bach Precision says Christians tend to be right-leaning, secular humanists, liberals are left-leaning. Yeah, and this political horseshoe model is what they actually created here intentionally. It's not just a cliche. It's not just a oversimplification as I thought it was. No, they deliberately created it. In fact, I have a. I'll see if I can pull it up here. I have an explanation for this, but the way I explain it simply is that I talk about the worldview that we have, and the majority of the people in the world are in the big middle, which is the blue pill, the dreaming world. Nothing really happens. But if you go deeper into this thing, you'll find, there's a lot more to get mad and agitated about. But depending on your political predilections, if you lean left, you'll veer towards wokeism. You'll embrace government, and you'll see the private sector as the problem. In fact, it's the private sector that's causing climate change. But if you lean right, you're going to see government as the problem, and you're going to see the government as even behind secret earth-destroying geoengineering. But each side blames the other. It's a perfectly closed system. And I saw this post today. I guess there's some fire going on in Canada. It's a place called Jasper. Yeah, here it is. Jasper, Alberta. One of the most beautiful places in the world. Firefighters don't think anything will be left by the morning, says Jane of the North. Jane says, I can't stop crying. The conservatives destroyed Jasper. The conservatives destroyed Jasper. Are you a conservative? Do you believe in free market and capitalism? You don't believe in climate change? Well, you destroyed Jasper. You see how they're able to blame the other side? But if you're right-leaning, you might say, no, God did this because the people in Jasper were all sinners. Other people agree. This is so horrible. Conservatives did this by taking dirty money. Right, big oil. One more reason why they are evil. So even they have a concept of good and evil. They don't care. It's up to us to keep fighting. We will win this fight. We will do it together. They're coping because, again, conservatives destroyed Jasper. But that's because Gaia is offended, and Gaia is getting revenge for what the free market is doing, exploiting the environment and all this stuff. But the right wing finds that laughable. They don't believe in Gaia or climate change, but they do believe in the flood myth, the Old Testament flood myth. And what would cause God to flood the world? not fossil fuels, sin, wickedness. The way leftists live, as viewed by the right, the opposite of the traditional family or traditional values. So you can see how each side is designed. It's designed this way. Each side will blame the other for whatever's not really even caused by man. They mutually scapegoat one another. Now here's what the FBI is saying. Donald Trump may not have been shot after all. Like, this is like a Mandela effect. They're basically calling him a crisis actor. Oh, that was nothing. It was just a scratch. It was just some shrapnel. You're overreacting. FBI Director Christopher Wray said, it's not clear whether he was hit by shrapnel or by a bullet. It says on Wednesday, Wray testified before the House Judiciary Committee, and it's not certain if his injury was a bullet or shrapnel. We obviously know that Mr. Comparator lost his life and 2 others were injured. And the one that hit President Trump, does that account for it? Some of these individuals were hit multiple times. Where did the 8 bullets go? So my question is, with respect to the former president, the question is whether or not a bullet or a piece of shrapnel hit his ear. It's conceivable. So I don't know whether that bullet, in addition to causing grazing, could have landed somewhere else, but we have accounted for all the shots in the cartridges. So they've kind of ruled out that he was even hit by a bullet. What a anticlimactic ending to that story. But I wouldn't worry. He's been saying that if they do assassinate him, nuke Iran. Jake the A-hole says, all the Trumpers swear there's a photo of the bullet. None of them say it's shrapnel. No, there's one guy who got a tattoo of Trump holding his fist up in the Braveheart pose. You can deconstruct and call this thing fake simply by examining the propaganda photography that followed it. There's no way he perfectly aligned with his Truth Social avatar and the Braveheart photo, and they reenacted the Marine War Memorial with the flag over his head if it wasn't staged this way. It was too perfect. And the photographed bullet was photographed by the guy who photographed somebody whispering into President Bush's ear on 9/11. So the significance here, assassination attempt, whispering in the ear of a president on 9/11, just like Richard Drew photographed the 9/11 falling man and the death of RFK. So these photographers are part of the production crew for these big psyops. HG says shutter speed at 8,000 feet per second. Well, Jim Fetzer's doing a great breakdown of it, and he's arriving at, yeah, this was fake. But he again thinks that this was fake because Trump had to thwart the deep state. And some people may never see through this whole thing. The scale of the fakery is too much for some people to fully grasp. Someone pointed this out a couple days ago, bears repeating. Saving Private Ryan, sniper gets shot in the eye. Actor's name, Leo Stransky, born 6/14. Been finding a lot of interesting people born with Trump's birthday who, in their roles, managed to foreshadow this thing. Okay, again, just a quick reminder, tomorrow at 4 p.m. we're going to be live. Well, we're going to be doing a premiere of the Bonversation number 51, which is my 4th appearance on JLB's program. Does dementia make you taller? This is going around. Joe Biden made an appearance last night, confirmation of life, I guess, but he appears to be about 5 inches taller, walks smoother, and swings his arms in an unrobotic, natural way. But he's significantly taller than he'd previously been. Like I don't know, what is this? Is this Obama in a Biden mask? But this is going around. It could be a body double, and he just sits there kind of leering. I just, based on this at first glance, I know he was never this tall. So I'm thinking this is Obama in a Biden mask. We'll follow up on that tomorrow. Here's a pretty good meme, and I think this sums up 713. MAGA actors, blank rounds, exploding blood pack, and perfectly placed cameras. And there was another photographer there who photographed one of the shots of Trump under fire, who had also taken the photograph of somebody throwing a shoe at George Bush. Totally staged. And I have a couple of other clues that to me are evidence of fakery. It's the RNC speech. Hulk Hogan said, "Enough is enough," when they try to shoot the president. Yeah, enough is enough is the Illuminati playing card, the sniper card with Trump on it, with a bullet whizzing by his head. But then he said, "The last time I was looking down at Trump was at Hulkamania, and I had blood dripping down my face on my way to the championship." So here he is, Hulk Hogan, on the stage of the RNC, looking down at Trump, recollecting a scene where he was covered in blood because he's a wrestler. So what does that mean? It means he cut himself. He was blading. Hulk Hogan had obviously cut his forehead so the blood would mix with the sweat, and he had his blood red face looking down at Trump before he won, and it was like Hulkamania. Well, he compared that event to Trump on 7/13, looking down with the bloody face on his way to win 2024. And after he made this comparison, Donald Trump, a fellow World Wrestling Entertainment Hall of Famer, blew him a kiss. And I thought, what does that mean? Blowing him a kiss. Something is exchanged there. And I think Hulk Hogan was admitting that Donald Trump did the same exact thing that I did. Bladed himself. He cut himself for the, I guess, the glorious PR opportunity, and it's similarly going to lead to a victory. And then he said that we're all Trumpites and it's going to be Trumpomania. But yeah, I think that the Hulk Hogan speech was a dead giveaway. Jim Carrey is tall and gangly like that, says Jake the A-hole. Timothy Ryan says that's not the real Biden. I don't think so either. I still think that Biden's played by Beau Biden. Eddie F says, Jim Carrey, another crazy theory to muddy the waters. I bet you think Trump is a female. Well, you cannot deny that it's fakeable. The mask technology is there. The acting skill is there. So no, it's 100% easy. It's doable. It's not even a question. Body doubles exist. Does Biden exist? Was he replaced? Yeah, kind of pointless questions in a sense. It's one of these things where informed disbelief is valid. Knowing what's fakeable, but just saying it's all fake because I don't want to believe it or because I'm on the right wing. No, it doesn't work. And there is a lot of deliberate misinformation to contaminate the field. Second shooter theories. Anybody chasing a second shooter has no clue. Anybody who thinks that somebody died on 7/13 is clueless. Anybody who thinks Ashley Babbitt is dead is also clueless and fooled. Tim, did you hear about the blood pattern on the shooter's face? It matches and references frazzle drips, says Unmediated Mind. I'll have to look. I haven't seen that. Timothy Ryan says Trump is female. I would say no. The transvestigationism was kind of a fad where you would have people spending days, weeks, months, spending all day looking at the crotches of celebrities and overlaying skulls over their faces and then saying, this person is a male, this one's a female. And it kind of went away after a while. I don't know who still promotes it, but there hasn't been any evidence for it, but there has been a lot of contradictory evidence. So, for example, a lot of these people will say Sylvester Stallone is a biological female. Well, you show them or you direct them towards the evidence that contradicts this. You know, his old films, his erotica, the sex films he did, and you're like, well, what's your explanation here? And they immediately jump to, oh, it's all prosthetics and CGI and Photoshop. No, I think that you've been debunked. So that's been debunked. At this point, if you're still in this area of, I don't want to say research, but if you're still promulgating that, you're kind of a fetishist at that point. Let's go back to the sane days of, oh, they're just reptilians. Timothy Ryan says, it's not the crotches, it's the skull and the bones and the gait. Yeah, these people think you can tell someone by how they walk downstairs. And it's kind of comical because it's sort of like phrenology. It's a pseudoscience. And it's a sad attempt at forensic anthropology. And none of them know that there are multiple skull overlays you would have to use. But they just use one. But it demonstrates this phenomenon of when the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So they're given a very simplistic operating system and they're able to prove themselves right every single time. They're never wrong. But there's also a level of gullibility and credulity of these people where I almost think you could convince them to start believing that dogs are cats and cats are dogs, and they would probably get stuck on that for months. It is phrenology, isn't it? It's ludicrous, but none of the people who espouse this stuff put their faces on video. None of them want to be known publicly for it, and it's because they're wrong. If it was true, they would get in front of it, and it would shake the world. But no, it's just something that's spread on Twitter, and I had looked into one of the major spreaders of this thing, Bevy112. Bevy presents herself as a Christian conservative exposing the evils of Hollywood and how all these actors are deceivers. But I did a little background check, and I learned that this person is actually kind of a squat, dumpy community college communist in Iowa who is LARPing as a Christian and making a bunch of right-wing conspiracy theorists look crazy. Like a literal leftist, commie Bernie Sanders supporter pretending to be a trad wife, transvestigating Hollywood actors, and has tens of thousands of followers, and nobody has figured this out. And I point it out and I get blocked. I would also consider it to be a form of gaslighting. There's no group of people more gaslit in the world than truthers, where they're always told, oh no, what you believe or what you see isn't true. I mean, the QAnoners have been hit pretty hard. They're just brain damaged at this point. Thomas Hughes says pigeons aren't real. Yeah, see, and pigeons aren't real, birds are fake. That is a conspiracy theory that was created by the Parkland school shooting survivors, who were also involved in, quote, die-ins, where after the shooting, they would all play dead in grocery stores with signs that say, you did this with your Second Amendment. So they were doing this performance art, very morbid stuff considering what they had just lived through. And nobody believed him, so they started doing this birds are fake to make fun of people calling shootings fake. But the difference is, we have evidence. We can find dead birds. You can't find any fake dead kids. Bach Precision says, what about Hans Wormhat? He claims to be from academia. Hans Wormhat is tragically mentally... I don't want to... I guess what I say is this. Hans Wormhat used to say there are no chimpanzees. There's just men in monkey costumes. And yeah, you can put on a monkey costume. You can fake being a chimp. But you can't fake chimps. Like, you can't scale that up. You can fake it for one scene, one room, one audience. But no, chimps aren't fakeable at scale. So he got into this realm of there are no duck-billed platypuses. These are beavers with plastic beaks. There are no toucans. These are parrots with plastic beaks glued on them. He started going down the line of, like, debunking animals. Well, then one day, he started on a live stream talking about how his dad shaves his legs. And he started accusing his dad of being his mom, and his mom of being his dad. So they put him into some kind of in-house treatment. He was gone for like a month. So after he got out of the mental health area, he came back and he became more biblical in his perspective. But no, he actually talked himself into a psychosis. And it got so bad it affected his personal life. So I'm kind of like thinking, yeah, he was gaslit and he had a psychotic break from reality. "777 says he was likely a Fed. Yeah, I tend to think that anonymous accounts that are very big, that non-stop post repetitively all kinds of ridiculous stuff like this, I think they might actually be there to, it's an active measure is what you would call it. An active measure is, it's a deliberate attempt to sabotage the perception of an entire demographic. And I think that he might be part of that. There's someone out there, big channel, he's like, Kamala Harris is Prince. And so I question him. I'm like, wait, you're saying that the musician Prince is now Kamala Harris? Are you just doing this for clicks? Are you a troll? Are you lying for fun? And I caught all kinds of flack. They said I wasn't open-minded. I'm like, wait, what does this have to do with separating fake from real if you're going to provide bad evidence and ridiculous claims and you're not going to substantiate them? So I did his homework. I'm like, well, if you're right, then Prince was dating Montel Williams in 2001. How do you explain that? Schizo-LARPing. Could be. So he gets mad at me for pointing out the inconsistency in his thing. He's like, well, I was just saying. I wasn't sure. I was just saying. So a lot of truthers mistake confusion for insight. Like, I'm baffled, therefore it's some kind of grand insight. No, it's not. You're confused. But yeah, this birds aren't real and similar things are part of a discrediting operation. Sure, I think it's a attack on your cognition. I feel the same for the Mandela effect. Because if you're falling for this stuff, it means you haven't figured out their sleight of mind. It means you haven't figured out what a loaded question is. You haven't figured out how they could smuggle a premise and corrupt your entire interpretation of something factual. Andy says, my mom told me Michelle Obama was going to be the first female president. I told her Obama's a... Oh. Funny. You see, I think that too. I think there's a lot of stuff that's put out there to discredit people. And that's why I want to point out too, I'm anti-anti. That's why I'm voting for Kamala Harris. The mainstream has the pro position. This is what you're supposed to believe. Then you have the alternative, which is the anti. And the antis think that they are correct. And the pro side thinks that they're correct. And I'm saying they're both wrong. You have to be anti-pro, anti-anti. That's for everything. If somebody's like, oh, I'm an anti-Fauci, it's like, well, I have to be anti-Faucis. Because the anti-Faucis are playing the same game as the pro-Faucis. If you're an anti-Fauci, you're actually on the same team. You're on Team Fauci. And people don't want to hear this, especially if they've taken the hardline anti-position on that side of the political horseshoe. It's like you took a position in the Psy-War. It's not my fault that you're playing a losing game. I often quote war games. It's a strange game. The only winning move is not to play. Like, I'm not playing their game. And if you're taking the anti-position, you are. And if you're playing the game, you're basically a pawn in this chess game. And the programmers play both sides. So I'm not a pawn in the hands of the programmers. The programmers don't control my life. They might control yours, they don't control mine. And the unmediated mind says, I'm pro-anti and anti-pro. See, if you're pro-anti, I'm saying you're the moral and intellectual equivalent of the pro side. You really have to reject both. Both sides are playing Hegelian dialectics. And I think one of the meanings behind the black and white checker floor in the Masonic Lodge, I think it represents this schism, this split on every major issue that they use to control the masses. The programmers don't fall into pro and anti, they're above it. So when you see this lodge floor, they call it we're on the level. Yeah, they're on a level standing atop the heads of those who are still caught up in the left-right paradigm. In the every one of these It's not just political footballs. This is worldview warfare. But if you're falling in lockstep, Woketown, Trutherville, or if you're just in the middle drifting in the blue pill apathetic world, you're under their control. You're in their program. Eddie F says, what does not playing the game mean? By us talking about it, we're playing the game. No, there's a difference between playing the game and deconstructing it. I have not been triggered, fooled, manipulated, or tricked by anything on the screen in years. At no point have I been, oh, that was real, or that's a real issue. No, none of it has fooled me. I haven't been slightly concerned about the safety of the world, myself, nukes, space junk. None of it has affected me at all. I have thoroughly unplugged. And the thing is, the people who don't pay attention, who are apathetic, they're in the game. Because at the end of the day, they believe all the stuff. They're just not reactive. But no, so not playing the game means inner peace. It means not hypocritically pulling the lever at the voting booth because we feel like there's still some value in it. So no, it's a wholesale rejection, inactivism, conscientious objection. You can't say you're anti-war if you're still participating in their psychological war. Ollie Goering says Rihanna had an album called Anti. Well, I'm the anti-anti. I actually put an article out saying that we have to take that position if we want to separate from controlled opposition. Because the controlled opposition position is the anti. So behind the scenes, like, okay, you've got CNN and then Fox. And so this is your mainstream boxes. But then you have the fringes within. And the people who take the hardline position against the mainstream, who are anti the mainstream, seem to have truth on their side. They present a unified front. And so it's very compelling. Like, look, these people are all standing up and fighting against the government. But this government versus private sector, even that is part of their bifurcated psywar. That's why you have weather happening, and the left wing says, oh, these capitalists and conservatives did it. They're blaming you for the weather. So what's more likely? That Republicans are causing bad weather, or that it's a psychological warfare operation where they're just getting people to blame each other for natural phenomenon? A Newful says, I've seen a lot of movement in the Truther Network to watch the Olympics to predict what's coming. Yeah, see, here's the thing. The Truthers do have a lot of insights. They got a lot of great information. It's just that it's muddied. It's been muddled. And we're the ones who are purifying it. That's what we're doing. We're going through Trutherville, attacking its orthodoxies, and seeing who is figured out how this rigged game works. And we're creating an exodus opportunity. This is going to be an exodus from Trutherville. And those who've already figured out, who are on the correct side of the screen, who have socially distanced from it, they will join us. Those who are still plugged into the controlled opposition game will go vote for Donald Trump. Good for them. But I think this is the perfect opportunity to create the schism. While everyone is caught up in the political drama, we can amalgamate here in what I call the parallel media. So we have to foment disbelief. And when you don't believe something, and this is another thing, I have the unaugmented reality. The person next to me believes in nukes, planet killer asteroids, pandemics, mass shooters. They believe in all the stuff that I don't believe in. They buy into the official history, which is just full of psyops that they take literally. So we live in two different worlds. So another thing here to address what Eddie F was bringing up, to not play the game means you've removed all of their hyperstitions and superstitions. We have exited their dark worldview designed to put you into a place of fear, insecurity, and doubt and confusion. But what are we left with? Well, if you subtract the augmentations, you're left with nothing more than what you can test and verify and what you can know. But then wherever there are bad explanations or wrong explanations that you have confronted, you're left with questions. So they may have a lot of answers that are wrong. We may have a lot of unanswered questions, and that's the main difference. But unlike believers who wait to be told what to believe, we're actively seeking to answer our questions. And another issue with Trutherville is that they take questions as a valid form of argumentation, like, what is that they're spraying? Or, they're pretty much built around this idea of just simply asking questions is somehow in and of itself a move towards truth, and it's not. Only if you're trying to answer those questions. Simply raising questions as a matter of habit tends to become a formula for confusion. So you have all these people asking a lot of questions and none of them are seeking answers. They're just comfortable with all the questions, which is a very foggy place to be. Like, I don't have any confusion. I'm not confused. I'm not like, well, maybe somebody died, maybe somebody didn't, maybe some people did. No confusion here. But I'll be watching the Olympics. I'll be watching it, obviously, because the best predictor of future behavior is relevant past behavior, and it seems like they use Super Bowls, they use Olympic ceremonies in order to convey things from the big script. They foreshadow. And this has been a consistent thing, so there's no reason not to look. Even though all the truthers do it, as we do, it's almost like with Super Bowls, it's a truther holiday. None of them are watching the game so much as they're watching to see what happens around the game. All right, we covered a lot of stuff today. Donald Trump again said, if they do assassinate President Trump, I hope America obliterates Iran. The shooter did so over immigration policy, just like Machete, predictive programming that pre-existed Trump. We covered the scary phone number, 4226, apparently translates to 666. Oh, here's one. Slim Shady released Coup de Grace right before the shooting, a few days before. And the album cover has the one-eye symbolism. And it got me thinking about his last appearance at the Super Bowl a few years ago, where he kneeled on the stage with his hand over his head for about 50 seconds. And they said he did so for Colin Kaepernick. But whatever the case is, the one eye covering at the halftime show, and the song was called One Shot. I think we need to consider the significance of this, considering how subsequent Super Bowl halftime shows have been presenting similar predictive programming, like the head wound guy of the weekend, or Brock Purdy compared to Lee Harvey Oswald. So I think it's significant that Slim Shady's album has this reference, the one eye, the title, and of course the coup de grace is the final shot. That's what he says here. It is the final shot. So again, one shot, the final shot, one eye. I think it's pretty clear. It's all pointing at the same thing. So one more point here, and Jurassic Liars has been hammering this point, that what we saw on 7/13 isn't all of it. That this was a setup. This is to get us to pay attention. That the one shot we're all waiting for is supposed to be a shot in the eye, a shot in the face. Here's Marshall Mathers dead in a coffin. Anyway, interesting foreshadowing. Bloody body on the ground. It has him as Jason Voorhees, and Jason Voorhees interestingly has the birthday of 6/13, which some have suggested, since you look at the date, Trump was born on 6/14/1946. Jason Voorhees was 6/13/1946. So a day off. However, if you look back in 1946, the Friday the 13th would have been, it wasn't a Friday the 13th that year. So I think there is some indication that Jason Voorhees may actually be a way of representing Trump. Something else here, I want to play this. This is Joe Rogan confronting the obvious scripted nature of the shooting event. And listen to his conclusion.
Speaking of which, how about that president? How about that Trump fella? How crazy is this? If there's ever been a real indication that we're in a simulation, It's like this season of USA is the craziest season that's ever existed.
No, it's so crazy it must be a simulation. This is an interesting take. Must be a simulation, bruh. Because it's so crazy. So they go from the news is 100% real to everything in the universe is a sim. Nothing is real. What about the news is a simulation superimposed over the real world? And if you confuse the two and you debunk the news, then you might think that everything is fake. This is why I've been arguing against synchronistic explanations that suggest that the predictive programming indicates that there's something supernatural going on. Before we rule in the supernatural or sim theory, we have to rule out the normal. So what's the most mundane explanation? And the fact that he reaches for what's more likely? He has no Occam's razor here, but what's more likely? That the event was staged and fake, or that we're in a simulation? No, the simulation shouldn't even enter the equation. Now, I don't think that Joe Rogan's mind is really blown by these events. I think his job is to get the attention of all the people who are looking at the stuff, even semi-critically, and just saying, yeah, this is shocking. It's like we're in a sim. It's a non-explanation, but it doesn't get anybody thinking, well, maybe the whole thing is fake and staged. Because again, you wouldn't be able to expose this event as fake in isolation, because it would necessarily mean there's complicity all around and everything is staged. And a lot of people just aren't ready for that. Lean Dion says, the screen is the simulation, the veil over the real. You could look at the screen as a hoodwink. The concept of the hoodwink is a wool hood that has been pulled over your eyes. You know the expression, the wool over your eyes. In the various initiatory cults, and this is not just specific to Freemasons, but in the Freemason cult, for example, when you're brought into the lodge, they have a wool sack over your head and a rope around your neck, and you're walked around the lodge a few times. And when you swear your oath to not tell secrets to people who are outside, there's a few things they say. They say that the people out there, outside the temple, are profane. Profane means outside the temple. That they are in the wilderness of darkness, which symbolizes their ignorance. So what the initiate is told is that the world out there is ignorant, and they have the wool over their eyes. They pull the hood off your head, and now you see the lights on the altar, and everyone around you with their Masonic costumes on, and you're shown the light. So this is a simple way of explaining how there is a split in society between those who have had the truth hidden from them, who are hoodwinked, and those who have been shown the light. And what I'm saying is that the screen is the universal hoodwink. Everybody that processes their reality through that screen has their head in a wool sack. They're being led around by a cable tow, by a leash, and they're being laughed at, which is a part of the initial ritual. Missing a shoe, pant leg rolled up, half your shirt is off, they're laughing at you because you're a fool to them by design. And the people who believe the news literally are fools. The programmers are laughing at you. And you can get instances of mockery in a lot of the bits of predictive programming, the duper's delight. So I would argue that they have created this split. Well, this is a continuation of a more ancient split in society between the programming class and the programmed. So the programmers isn't just a group of like 5 people in a room, like Dr. Evil and Number 2 and all the others, and they're controlling us and laughing. No, it's a programming class. What are their numbers? I don't know, but I think we can outnumber them. Thomas Hughes says, who then pulled us out of the darkness because we know it wasn't them? Well, this is the thing too. We have managed to figure stuff out. We've spied. I think they would call us cowens. There's an old term for those who have seen the rites but haven't been initiated or formally trained. Here we go. Cowens and eavesdroppers. Someone who presents themselves as a Mason who has not gone through the initiation, But basically, people who aren't part of it, but who may have figured some stuff out. What we're doing here is we're exploiting their limited hangout operations. We're not being led by their agents, but we're taking any clues we can and piecing it together. So we have kind of it's very Promethean. You know, Prometheus climbs Mount Olympus because the world down below is all dark, and he steals the fire of the gods, which I think is symbolic of their light, which conquers the ignorance, and he shares this information and lights up civilization. And they punish him for it by, I think, chaining him to a rock in Hades, where he has his liver devoured by a vulture or an eagle every day. But that explains it pretty well, I think, that you have the programming class and the rest of us down below in the darkness. The purposeful ignorance of subjective belief systems unattached to objective reality. The only people with a perspective that includes objective reality are the people very high up at the capstone level of the programming class. Andy says it's not a simulation, it's a bad script. Exactly. Thomas Hughes says, Land of the Blind. You know, I have a book here called In the Country of the Blind. I still need to write a review on it. And this book was it just came to me in a form of a synchronicity. I was listening to a podcast about Michael Flynn, General Flynn, and the whole Q movement. And I'm walking through a Goodwill, and I see a book by a Michael Flynn. It's called In the Country of the Blind, and it has a guy on the cover with an eye patch and a nuke going off behind his head. And this book was published, I think, in 1980 or something. But it was about a small group of people who introduced memes to the masses through their control over media and influenced and steered history. Exactly what we've been talking about for years. What we've been talking about, what we've been formulating, the news-bent reality, the meta-scriptors. It's in this book by someone coincidentally named Michael Flynn. And within the book, it talks about this Q file because the protagonist manages to find out about this conspiracy and publishes it worldwide by sending her findings via fax to all these various newsrooms about who was involved in the conspiracy. The masses rise up and they're hunting down the people who are behind it. So it's an interesting book, but it's based on the idea of there being groups of people who have taken a great deal of control over the collective by manipulating our beliefs about what the world is and how things are unfolding. I like Newsbenders is one of the best explanations. If you watch Newsbenders, The Village, back to back, you'll pretty much see how the world works, in my opinion. But I'll write a review on this book because I had a lot of interesting coincidences or synchronistic alignments with it. But the general premise of it, I think, is actually accurate to how things really do work. But as far as what we're doing, we have really taken a different position because generally the people who recognize the fakery or that the news is lying or these stories aren't what they say, they get filtered into this framework where everything is either real or it's a false flag. Real or a false flag. Well, false flag theories still involve real events. It just means somebody else did it. It means there's a patsy. So it's real versus real with a second story attached to it. So that's not really an alternative. The real alternative that should be there, if you're going to be honest, should be real or simulation. Because there have not been any false flags. And there haven't. So when it comes to this false flag theory, that's always been a truth or trap to keep people away from calling it fake. Because when you realize it's fake, then you start finding that, okay, well then, apparently entertainment and news media are one and the same. They're entraining our minds to one thing, which is worldview. They're writing our history in advance. You know, I talked about this today with JLB. I'll probably save it for tomorrow. At 4 p.m. tomorrow on this YouTube channel, we're going to premiere the first hour of our conversation. And I was describing what I think predictive programming really is and what I think the best explanation for it is. and how it's not merely predictive. It's concurrent, it's reinforcement training, it's standard operating procedure, and it's mind entrainment. 777, it says, a script is technically a simulation. Yes. So the simulation thing is this. Your internal concept of the world is molded by their influence, by the influences of this immersive media. And what it has done is it had augmented our reality with things that don't exist. And the people who take it literally, for all intents and purposes, exist in a simulation. In other words, their world contains a lot of things that aren't really there, and it can be molded from without. Like, for example, they can introduce things that didn't exist and now they do, and people will respond as though these things are real. These are called hyperstitions. Like the space junk that just punched through somebody's home in Florida recently. Well, space junk wouldn't exist if they hadn't conditioned us with movies to be prepared for it. So when they introduce it, nobody balks at it. We're like, oh yeah, we expected this. It's priming, exactly. Predictive priming, says Lean Dion. It's also useful to look at it as a form of advertising. Advertising works on the premise that you have to be pre-sold something by exposure, repeated exposure a number of times before you're going to just accept it. So you experience many of these news events that we see on the world stage in your mind, in your subconscious, in the entertainment many times before it really happens. I would even say that the first-person shooter games that are so popular are part of this operation, so that when you have like a mass shooter, like, oh, this 90-pound weakling kicked down a door and shot 26 people with, you know, perfect score. Well, that's not realistic. But if you've been playing video games 24/7 where you're having similar body counts, yeah, it's in your frame of reference that you could actually accomplish this. I think it's part of the saturating the collective psyche with the idea that these things even exist. We often talk about this immersive illusion, how it's created by entertainment like video games. The game Modern Warfare 3 came out on 10/6. So 10/6 last year, millions of people are immersed in a simulation of war. The next morning, Israel gets attacked on the news, and a lot of the reportage included video game footage, as with Ukraine and Russia. But my point here is that those tens of millions of people who were immersed in the game are far more likely to unquestioningly accept what they're seeing on the news. And the game Modern Warfare, I think that's kind of an ironic title because modern warfare is psychological warfare. It's mind war. And it's endless. And it's the entire purpose of media. Media was never there for your edification. It was never there to inform you. It's always been there to conform you. Okay, we covered quite a lot. Again, tomorrow it's going to be premiere. So we'll talk about a number of things there as well. I think we're going to arrive at something here. You know, we have a lot of different views on what predictive programming means, but I think that we've moved everything forward a little bit. I think we've raised standards of evidence for what we should accept, what we should remain agnostic about, and I think the best possible explanation for the predictive programming used to be something different, but we have enough information now to see its obvious political utility. So it's not a conspiracy theory to say that there is a one world government and a one world religion. It already exists. It's the old one, and it's just been updated, which is good news in the sense that you don't have to run for the hills. Like, you've already been conquered. That's the good news. You don't got to run into a bunker. You don't have to worry about the end of the world. The whole Turner Diaries, rise up and resist the New World Order. There's no point. Resistance is utterly futile. Best thing you can do right now is inform yourself. Upside Down Guy says, did you see the ISS? Didn't see anything. Didn't see chupacabras. Didn't see flying saucers. Didn't see the Millennium Falcon. No Bigfoot. Didn't see any unicorns marking their turf in the stratosphere, creating chemtrails. Didn't see anything that doesn't exist. Nothing. Although I tried. I did try only for one reason. None of those ISS believers with no evidence can say to me, well, you just need to look up. I just did. Twice. Didn't see anything. Ball is in your court. Lean Dion says, keen to hear what JLB thinks it is. I thought he was hinting at the synchro-mystic angle. Well, we have, because synchro-mysticism is an older school of thought that I don't think fully encompasses media fakery. And a lot of it came at a time when people thought these events were real. But now that we know that these events are simulation, now it puts it in a different context. The universe doesn't send prophetic messages about fake events. Messianic Children says, Elon's trans kid slams him, declaring to all that the real celebrity blood sacrifice isn't killing your kid, it's transforming it. I saw that. Musk said that his son died. And he didn't mean it literally. But he said the woke mind virus took his son away from him. So now his son, now daughter, is uploading content saying that Elon Musk, that her dad or whatever, is some kind of seeking attention, I guess. And again, Musk is playing the role of a right-wing culture warrior. The mind virus, the term mind virus, isn't new. Richard Brody, Virus of the Mind, introduced this concept, I think really codified it. Interestingly, he created Microsoft Word. So think about it, Microsoft Word, mind virus being a word or a meme. Microsoft and viruses, there seems to be something with this theme here, because they use the physical virus in order to condition us to understand the concept of the mind virus, the thought crime. And they conflated the two. If you look at how it emerged, you had safe spaces on college campuses, which meant lefties can be safe from right-wing ideas. They needed that space because they didn't want those mind viruses in their safe space. So they were quarantining. So think about it. They were quarantining leftists against right-wing mind viruses. Then we have the pandemic where they had social distancing. Now we're physically distancing. Why? While quarantining, so we don't catch the physical virus. But then as it evolved, they started to correlate the physical virus with the right-wing mind viruses that make them resistant to the cure. So now you have a reason to quarantine against right-wing mind viruses again, because they bring the real viruses. So now we move past that, pandemic's gone, but now the public has been acclimated to the idea that mind viruses are the greatest threat to our survival. And they're going to continue to play this card with the help of Elon Musk. So the WHO has this hypothetical thing called Disease X, the one that's going to take us all out, the one that we can't plan for, Disease X. I think Disease X is X. It's Twitter. It's the vector for the mind viruses that are going to radicalize the right-wing, domestic, violent, extremist scapegoats who are going to collude with Iran or Russia and nuke something. And they're going to say, we wouldn't have had this 9/11 event if it wasn't for free speech, if it wasn't for Disease X, the rage mind viruses spreading on Musk's website. So Musk is a fall guy for free speech. I don't think he believes any of it. I think he's a fall guy 100%. He's playing a role. And this also correlates to his role as the leading polluter of low Earth orbit. They've correlated mind junk with space junk. Mind viruses and low Earth orbit being polluted by this billionaire. Mr. Beast with infinite Illuminati money to throw around, says 777. Yeah, Mr. Beast is the top earning YouTuber, and there's some drama with him right now. They disconnected with some. I never quite thought much of him. I never paid attention to him until JL brought him up. And apparently Mr. Beast's real name is Donald. Mr. Beast is Donald. What's his last name? Oh, Donaldson. Mr. Beast, his name is Donaldson. Jimmy Donaldson. Now, when was Jimmy Donaldson born? I'll have to look. Okay, Mr. Beast. I'm not sure if there's anything else about him that's sus, other than the fact that he's like the top YouTuber, and that his name has got Beast in it and Donald's son. I'll have to ask JL, who's decoded a lot of these characters. Yeah, Upside Down Guy is back. He didn't bring any fan fiction, but hopefully he comes up with something. I'd recommend ChatGPT if you want to continue down that route. We talked about Joe Biden being 5 inches taller than usual. Again, I'm just kind of glad we're moving past that scene. We needed this plot twist. Predictive programming in a movie called Upload. A 2020 Amazon Prime releases a show called Upload. A lady points to a poster. It has Oprah and Kamala Harris for 2024. Okay, here's another one. This is an old image. Vintage. Someone had said, are they getting worse with their psyops? No, they're getting better. This is vintage. This is a NASA image from, I think it was from the 80s, but this is an image of outer space, some city up in the Hubble got this one.
Look. Hey, the Hubble telescope launched back in 1990. 4 years later, 1990.
So 1994, the Hubble got this image. Like, they used to really do bad. This is like crayon. This is terrible.
Before we get that image right there. Okay, shot back down to Earth from the Hubble telescope. Now, what did NASA do? Of course, they tried to hide it, but it didn't work. Now, by the way, that picture right there, my uncle gave me that picture. It was taken by a photographer at Ellington Airfield of the Hubble telescope. You guys know.
So apparently the Hubble telescope brings this image up that this guy is saying is actually heaven up in space. And I've been saying that they brought the concept of space to the masses to replace all of the different competing versions of heaven. Because everyone goes to different heavens. Jew heaven, Christian heaven, Mormon, celestial kingdom heavens, Catholic heaven. They don't agree. They all think everyone else is going to hell. And they're always going to fight forever. So you have all these religions, these old traditional religions, fighting over who's got the right path to heaven. And yet, all of them agree that man's future is in space. They all agree that the space utopianism is progress and is where we're going. So the atheists and the religious believers of various denominations and faiths all agree in this new universal heaven. So space is a heaven that even the atheists will believe in. And this is just some old imagery of NASA creating what looks to be heaven in space. And people believe this stuff. Oh, this came from the Hubble. This looks like crayon to me.
We're talking about the Hubble telescope. Are they trying to send us a message? I mean, what are we looking at here, guys? Crazy. I mean, it reminds me of like ancient ruins like on Mars or the moon or, or any planet for that matter.
He's showing ancient ruins on the moon. And this is what I call fake. Fake. It's not just fake. And this is a clever trick. Like when a car salesman has you debating or discussing the color of the car, they've already sold you on the car. In this case, if they have you talking about pyramids on Mars or alien moon bases or ancient ruins floating in the middle of the galaxy somewhere, they've already got you accepting their entire cosmography. Now you're just debating on the details, but you've swallowed the big picture wholeheartedly. I just believe all this. Let's fight over the nuance. So again, this is pretty terrible. I'm just bringing this up to show you that their space fakery is probably better now than it was then.
I mean, to me, there's too many shapes and there's too much geography there. It doesn't look natural. Okay. And again, it's very beautiful to look at. When I saw it, I just kind of stared at it for a while. I was like, wow, that is absolutely beautiful. But
it's absolutely fake. But he says NASA's trying to hide it. Like, oh, they're trying to hide the pyramids on Mars. It's reverse psychology. It's breadcrumbs. They're trying to get you to try to follow it because it makes you a deeper believer. Yeah, they saw heaven. Upside Down Guy has gifted some memberships, so a number of you have Blue Wrenches, Salty Siren, FMGR, Bach Precision, Hellbilly Homestead, Travis Cloud, Anufo, Lean Dion. All of you have Blue Wrenches. Me and my drone. In fact, if you've been lurking, you might be brought out into the light when you get handed your wrench. Scott Rankin, Roxy W, T-Rex in Space has received a blue wrench. David Hazel says, but must 72 virgins. Speaking of that, the incel is the domestic violent extremist Magaban counterpart to the jihadi suicide bomber. Suicide bomber saving himself for virgins in heaven, saving himself because Western women are corrupt and evil and it's the great Satan. Well, what are the incels doing? The incels are celibate because Western women are bad, and they're also like suicide bombers. They do their thing and they get killed. Maga Akbar. But they're also sexually repressed terrorists with an axe to grind with women and the deep state or great Satan. Deep state equals great Satan. Same thing. Same targets. Dynamo Hum, Nicotramus, Linda Curtis, Nothing Major, Nicholas Pitts, KKN, Jimbo Akimbo, Neat, Chai Pops, iFepe, Sleepy Random, Michelle Kastner, Space Chimps have all received blue wrenches. Same with Sync Lloyd. Okay, well, I'm going to have to make it a point then to upload some more video content. Bach Precision says, I'm old enough to remember when suicide bombers became a thing in the Muslim world in 1989. Well, I've done this parallel between the MAGA ban, domestic violent extremist, vanilla ISIS, white Al-Qaeda, and, well, I mean, I'm pointing out what they've created. Al-Qaeda means the base. The white nationalist group that's the feds are always hyping up is called the base. And when you go through it, you find that the MAGA traditional values are actually mirroring a lot of what you would see with the radical Islam, especially with their views toward the West. And this is all by design. They've created this construct. So instead of being radicalized by Quran verses, it's by QAnon verses. The incel is the suicide bomber. The deep state is the great Satan. And if you look at their attitude towards Hollywood, towards feminism, you can see, okay, it's pretty much the same ideology. So the significance of the number 611, McVeigh's execution date, as the inverted 9/11, makes a lot more sense when you realize 9/11 and 6/11 represent the external terror threat and the domestic terror threat. Both of these terrorist groups are complete fabrications designed to get the public behind eradicating something. And I think the MAGA construct, the whole QAnon movement, I think all of it was put together here in order to eliminate that entire traditional value worldview construct and remove it as a competitor versus the utopianism that they're presenting with scientism and nasatology. I think it's all being set up for destruction, and that's why it's so obviously being caricaturized. I mean, look at their final story, the Great Awakening. What is the Great Awakening? It's when the QAnoners are able to see all the Democrats, all of the deep staters executed in military tribunals. Many of them want to see decapitations. They have murder fantasies where Hollywood gets killed at Guantanamo. How is that not a holy war? I mean, it is decidedly a holy war. But I'm saying it's also fake, as in it's engineered. Thomas Hughes says the Maganistas. Yep. The MAGA ban, MAGA stand. And there's another thing too. I pointed this out as it was occurring. So like 2022, 2023, it became very popular for right-wingers to start questioning the age of consent. You had Nick Fuentes. He's talking about how he wants someone who's recently turned 16, that 30-year-old conservatives need to start having lots of babies with high school age girls so that they never get a job and never become feminists in college and just have a bunch of babies so they can stop being replaced by immigrants. And this has been repeated. There's a lot of right-wingers I've heard. Matt Walsh parked his car once and he had this rant about the age of consent being too low. And he's already married with children. But I notice a lot of people on the right saying the same thing at the same time. Even comedian Owen Benjamin, they're all like, age of consent is a barrier to nationalism and traditional values, and you're just letting the NWO take the women and corrupt. It just goes on and on about they need to lower the age of consent, take away the right to abort, push back civil rights. I'm like, where are all these ideas coming from? And why are they being shouted out unanimously from the right? And it's because the MAGA ban is a construct that they have purposefully disseminated through their agents because they're trying to shift right-wing culture to embrace certain ideas. Anufel says, that's actually based, I agree there with Nick Fuentes. Well, Nick Fuentes is a groomer. And some poor 12-year-old somewhere is probably going to be married to him in about 3 or 4 years. And I feel sorry for that person. But no, Nick Fuentes is a terrible racist bigot who's mad that Donald Trump's VP pick isn't married to a white woman and their kids aren't white enough. Yet Nick Fuentes is Mexican or half Mexican. It's like, go move to Mexico then. You know, like, I don't understand his perspective. I think he's a LARP. And not only that, but Fuentes is a groomer who's associated with Ollie Alexander. So how can you stand by Fuentes? Fuentes isn't based. There's nothing based about preying on young male conservatives and then compromising them in order to let them into your fold. I mean, that entire Christian conservative thing is awash with perverts. Like, how can you stand by that guy? Nick Fuentes is a pervert, groomer, racist, scumbag, sexist, and he's also not only a LARPer and a tool, but he has no real life experience. He's attached his entire persona to Trumpism, and he went online. Never had a real world experience. So I see him out there with his Trump-like haircut, talking with his hands like he's got an invisible accordion, which is a Trump move, talking like Trump, and now he's mad at Trump. It's like, what's going to happen after Trump to Nick Fuentes? Anyway, I wouldn't follow any of these characters. Upside Down Guy says, Tim and Goldfinch had a disturbing breakup. Yeah, I don't know where you're going with that, but your whole fan fiction thing is a little vanilla. I think you should try harder. Kubera91 says, Chalk Body is an alt-right Christian ex-truther. I understand being an ex-truther. Trutherism has become a religion. In many ways, it's kind of a neo-Gnostic religion. It's a religious paradigm for sure. And it does become something of an end times thing. And I think it does lead a lot of people astray. It's a government-created religion. So I don't fault somebody for leaving Trutherville. I'm all for it. David Hazel says, I think Owen B is a Fed too. He may be. He may be. I can't say for sure. But he did come from Hollywood. He dated Christina Ricci. It's a very small world. He could be part of what I call the programming class. You've got the programmers, the programmed. And the programmers would be everyone from crisis actors to psyop actors to actors with intelligence agency connections who are used to disseminate certain ideas. Comedians. Comedians would be perfect for this job. We're talking about gatekeepers. People can float extreme ideas out there and then see who gloms onto them and they can shoot them down. There's a reason why so many of these big truthers are basically comedians. Fascinating. Messianic Charlatan says Owen B is Ben Affleck. So is Ben Affleck LARPing as a homesteader, right-wing kind of shock comedian? Maybe. Maybe. He does look kind of Ben Affleck-y at certain angles. But I don't think Ben Affleck is 6'6" or 6'9" or whatever he is. Yeah, Lean Dion says super chats are funnier. Yeah, Upside Down Guy, if you want to write Tim and Goldfinch fanfic, do it in super chats. I will read it. But comedians, though, we're talking about comedians. I think comedians are. And this is like a right. I've noticed this too. There's like comedians and mixed martial arts types that are being used to spread things like flat Earth, QAnon. I'm like, why is this? And I think it's because they want to have in this split. They want to have toxic masculinity squarely on the right, and then feminism on the left, and they keep this divide. It's part of their bigger divide, but they're having these ideas of conspiracy theories and anti-media attitudes associated with the fighters. And I think it's all just because these individuals they're popular, they're influencers, and they're given secondary roles as disinformation agents, like Ryan Garcia, his whole Me Too at Bohemian Grove thing. Psyops Matter says Tim is the best. Hey, thanks for joining. Bach Precision says Jonathan Swift, Mark Twain, all funny for their time and all secret society types. Yeah, wasn't Mark Twain a Freemason? I don't know about Jonathan Swift. I haven't read about that. But I think that there is enough evidence here that, yeah, we're run by secret societies, but what do the secret societies do? Well, like we can name names. Look at someone like Pete Davidson, comedian. His dad died at 33 in one of the Twin Towers, supposedly. So when I look at someone like that, it's like, well, 9/11's a hoax. Someone who died and its kid is now very big in media, dating Kim Kardashian, SNL. So you look at this character, it's like, well, obviously he was born in the cult. He's part of the programming class. It's like an elitist thing. But I don't think they're all fully apprised of the totality of the fakery. It's compartmentalized, sort of like the military, where you have security clearances, and not everyone is going to be told the big secrets. What separates us from the programming class is that we're figuring out the program, but we're not a part of it, and we're not gatekept. Upside Down Guy says Tim and Goldfinch met in the military, had a relationship. After that, the feud began. Again, that's kind of vanilla. Throw some adrenochrome in there. Maybe some 50 Shades of Grey type stuff. Yeah, but keep going. Keep going. Appreciate that very much. It's a $10 super chat to say Tim and Goldfinch met in the military and had a relationship, and then a feud began. Robbie C. Williams says, ironically, Owen Benjamin is one of the few calling out the Trump assassination as completely fabricated. Yeah, he is calling it out fake, and what's funny is a lot of people are pushing back against him for it. He referred to them as a mob, that there's this right-wing mob, and I think he's right about it. I don't follow him enough to really comment very much more. The only reason why we ever talk about Owen Benjamin is that he was at this Flat Earth conference where he was the conference speaker. And that's when we're like, well, who is this person? And why are they bringing somebody out with so much baggage? Because instead of the media reporting on the Earth being flat or people challenging NASA, instead the whole conversation was, oh, this guy uses the N-word in his comedy and he hates Jews. And it's like, oh, there we go again. Eric Dubay all over again, where you have this conversation about your distrust in this agency that's wasting billions of dollars a year, and instead now you're just being branded because some top influencer in this group has these very bad opinions. Okay, moving on. Jake the A-hole says, I lost 250 subs for calling the Trump event fake. I was surprised that many Trumpers were following my channel. Right. I'm at the point here where the truth is all that matters to me. And if the people are going to filter themselves out because the truth offends them, let them go. We have to quarantine. Consider that an improvement. Those 250 people and their bad discernment could have infected more people in your group, in your subscriber base. So no, good riddance. I want to find all of the people who aren't fooled, who aren't propaganda mules for the NWO, who aren't carrying the burden of proof that isn't theirs. Bach Precision says Owen Benjamin's shadow banning seems performative. Oh, being performatively shadow banned is a great way to get sympathy donos, sympathy support. Alex Jones has done it. It's a standard truther thing to act like you're being censored, to play the victim. I refuse to do that. We've had 160 channels taken down. We've had multiple interactions with a government operative who seemed to have been tasked with shutting us down. Sued him multiple times, in a lawsuit with him right now. Like, we have a legitimate case that the powers that be don't want this channel to exist. But do we sit here and talk about how we're being censored? No. We're like doing our thing because this isn't performative. And we just decided we don't need to breathe their air. We don't need their approval. We're not trying to get them to let us at their party. We're trying to aggregate those who have deprogrammed and just move into the separate body altogether. Upside Down Guy for $10 says, Jake the A-hole is a crazy drug addict that assaulted a special ed person. See, I think we might be dealing with somebody hanging out with Jaron. Because every time I talk about how Jaron is a federal informant who's working for NASA, this guy gets really triggered. And everything he just said was said by Jaron back when they were having some beef. Very interesting. Jake the A-hole says he gets comments like, I agree with you about the NFL being scripted, but not the Trump shooting. Somebody died, man. Not everything's fake. When somebody says, not everything's fake, your response should be, not everything on the screen is real. You're both making the same claim. You can't judge it all in one way. You can't say it's all fake. No, you can't. And you can't say it's all real. So where do you go? You go with fake until proven real. Not real until proven fake. Unless you're a media fundamentalist believer with no mental immune system. If you have mind aids, then yeah, everything's real until proven fake. By a government-approved conspiracy theorist who's allowed to debunk it, which never happens. Maybe Jussie Smollett. But if you don't have mind aids, if you've been mind war inoculated, and most of you here are, if you've been listening to Infinite Plane Radio long enough, you're mind war inoculated, then everything is fake until proven real. That's not a tall burden of proof for them. You know, if they're not lying, they should demonstrate it. That is their job. Jake the A-hole says, Upside Down Guy, keep talking, you Jaron taint liquor. Josh Libsek says, Jake is a legend, and Jaron is a shill. Jake the A-hole says, Jaron wanted to measure my blank. I will let Will Duffy know that Jaron faked a laser experiment and he likes to measure blanks. Okay, yeah, I can see where this is going. But, you know, we're here to talk about the nature of reality as seen through this collectivizing filter that creates this hive mind, and how what we are looking at is different from that. How we have emphasized real over fake, whereas the rest of the world has been, I would say, subverted. So at this point, you know, the YouTube beef between channels isn't really a part of the picture. But the reason why we're even talking about this is that Jaronism posed as a truther for a long time, and then he provided evidence on behalf of NASA to discredit every legitimate criticism he had raised in the past. And so what do you call that? Controlled opposition. Etheric Bliss said, did this just regress 30 years? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We don't even get into the weeds with this stuff. I think that when YouTube was the primary vehicle and channel for these kinds of conversations, you would have people fighting each other because the idea was if you take down a channel, you get some of their subs. But that being said, you know, I'm not competing for anybody's subs. I'm not competing. That's not what we do here. But if we're going to be truthful, we have to at least be able to admit that we know that there are controlled opposition agents who are trying to gatekeep certain topics. And some people are very defensive of gatekeepers that they tend to trust. But I trust the evidence. And the evidence presented with an ISS transit over the sun or over the moon are evidences of somebody working for the other side. 777 says, would you say Powerland also works for the same entity? Good question. Former MTV actor, MTV, we're talking about mind control. I would say so. The programming class consists of a number of people at various levels of awareness of the big picture, but I think they're all essentially connected to Intel. Essentially, that's what we're looking at. Jake asks, Upside Down Guy, why do you love Jaren so much? Honest question. It is an honest question, and I am interested in the answer. I'm not going to read negative comments. I am censoring them. But I am interested in this subject because it seems like we have hit a nerve somewhere. And it is an Achilles heel. Look, it's a stain. It's a blight. You cannot escape this. If you present fabricated evidence on behalf of the premier worldview mind control agencies, the space agencies, then what does that say about your position here? Outer space doesn't exist the way they describe it, but you could look at it as a metaphor for inner space. That is, controlling the mass mind through worldview control. And I would say they have seized that control. David Hazel says, right side up guys either on or off his Fed meds. Baby trooper. Well, let me ask this question. Like, what would be the reason for somebody with mind aids to hang out with the inoculated? Like, you could catch something from us. You might catch something that contradicts your programming. This is not a safe space, is what I'm saying. This is not a safe space for people who are media fundamentalists or who are believers in MSM or MSM+. This is a place for non-believers. Everybody's welcome here, but it will be very challenging. And what we're aiming for here, long term, paradigm shock to the system. Paradigm shock to the system. And what I mean by this is the weight of our criticism combined with our methodology employed by an increasingly large number of people will become unignorable after a point where if you have a lot of people calling out an obvious operative who's obviously pushing a psyop, a false flag narrative for bad evidence, they're going to have to buckle at some point. But we need numbers on our side. And right now, auto-hoaxers are outnumbered by Mandela affected. We're outnumbered by QAnons. We're outnumbered by anti-vaxxers. We're outnumbered by all kinds of non-skeptical tribes of truthers. And that can change. A Newful says, we cure the zombification of the masses using words and logic. Yeah, it's actually a matter of deprogramming. If you look into cults and group think and cult mind control, there's an entire process where somebody becomes subservient to the group. And there's a process that someone has to go through to exit the group. There is a deprogramming process. Worldview warfare deposes the ego, the self, as a final arbiter of what someone believes and replaces it with what the group believes. Well, the media has done this en masse. And deprogramming takes work at the level of the individual. You can't pull somebody out of the box. You can't wake them up with red pills. Upside Down Guy says, I follow CNN and mainstream media. What they say is true. That may be, but what do you get out of it? Like, if you don't work in media, if you're not part of media, why would you want to fight on their behalf? Like, the state governments of the world, the governments of the world, the state, the world state church, it wants us to believe in nukes, which are fake. But I don't want people to not believe what the TV says. So let me go to the skeptics and try to stop them. Like, I don't know what your point is. Like, you're not going to stop us. Fake dead kids' lives don't matter. We don't care about any of these contemporary myths. We're not moved by it. We're not swayed by it. We're not emotionally triggered. In fact, a lot of these things are entertaining for us. January 13th was hilarious. Not a tragedy. Nobody died. Nobody cried. January 6th was a joke. None of this stuff is in any way upsetting to us because we don't believe in it. And if you do, that's fine, but like you're not going to change our minds, because this isn't about beliefs versus beliefs. This is about operating systems and how we arrive at what we claim to know, our knowledge claims. A Newful says, I love Upside Down Guy. He makes me laugh so much it's therapeutic. That's the only reason we're keeping him here. Upside Down Guy says, your back alley beliefs that everything is fake and a hoax has no evidence that can be proven. It's called burden of proof. If I'm a liar and I tell you 10 lies in a conversation and you call them fake, or you say you don't believe me because I don't provide evidence, the burden of proof is on me to provide the evidence, not on you to believe it. So I would cite Hitchens' razor. It's one of these epistemological razors, heuristic. Hitchens' razor is a general rule for rejecting certain knowledge claims. And you can apply this to anything that comes from the mainstream media. What is asserted without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. Simple. The burden of proof regarding the truthiness of any claim lies with the person making the claim. If the burden's not met, then the claim is unfounded, and the opponents don't need to argue against it any further. I don't need to argue against any of the MSM claims or these fake dead people or any of these psyops being anything more than simulations. They haven't provided the proof. It's not on me. It's your work. So you would have to do the homework. So we're open to it. If you want to do some homework and find out what fake things are real and prove it to us and show us we're wrong, I'm all ears. I've been saying for some time, please, somebody, prove me wrong. So Upside Down Guy, that's your homework tonight. Find one event that we have deemed fake that is real and bring some evidence. We look forward to it. It's a lot of work being a propaganda mule for the MSM. It's like they can't do it on their own, but maybe you can help them. Maybe you can help CNN, Fox, you can help the BBC. Maybe you can help the Associated Press out and push back at the non-belief. Maybe you could join the Parkland High School students with the Birds Are Fake movement, and you could become a Birds Are Fake activist in order to fight back against those of us who don't believe the news. But look, we're not believers here. That's the main thing too. In many ways, you could consider auto-hoaxers to be atheists to the World State Church. So if you're a believer, we'll just take Upside Down Guy as an example. One of the gods you worship is the mushroom cloud. When you see a mushroom cloud on TV, your knees shake, and you dive under a desk, and you quiver. And you do it because you don't feel safe anymore, because you believe in that angry war god that we call the atomic bomb. So while you're there, Upside Down Guy, under your desk, quivering and wetting your pants, we're laughing. We're laughing because we think the special effects are terrible, but you're terrified. And that's one of the main differences, is that you choose to believe in it because you're a media fundamentalist, and we're non-believers. We're atheists. We don't believe in the mushroom cloud god that has you so scared. We reject your God constructs. I don't believe in Gaia. I laugh at that concept. So you think that Gaia is going to put Florida underwater if we don't recycle? Like, no, I don't think Gaia exists. Jungle Jim, Cleodessa, Signs of Privilege, My Third Eye, Max Carter, Vanden, T-Dog135, Buzzy, Ro Knows the Truth, Tricky Woo have all received memberships to the Blue Wrench Lodge, courtesy of Upside Down Guy. Pay to troll, exactly. And you know, that's the great thing about super chats. You can say things or post things on the screen that might contradict what the host of the live stream is saying. A Newful says, while nukes aren't real, there are bombs that can do very real mass destruction. Sure, but these are there's a magnitude of difference here. The instant they convinced the masses that nukes were real, they redefined the power structure geopolitically, where now every nation is under the control of somebody with the power to destroy the world. Mutually assured destruction. Now everybody can die. So now humanity collectively is in this hostage situation. And it's a circular firing squad where now we are all on the precipice of certain destruction. The world can end at any moment. We officially became an end times doomsday cult when they invented this thing and presented it on TV. With the advent of the nuke, mankind was dragged onto the stage. Now we're in an alternate reality game. We're in a movie-based reality where we weren't before. Now we're all crisis actors. Now we all exist in a false world construct with false threats that frame our existence. And that's why it matters. They introduce something fake, they redefine the world based on it. And there's nothing that regular bombs can do that's even comparable to what the nuke threat presents. And the thing is, every government, every world leader, they all act as though these things are real. I was in the military, and that was one of my MOSs. I was 54 Bravo, nuke biochemical decon. And one thing that's true is that every single soldier believes in every one of these God constructs. Every soldier is trained to believe in weapons of mass destruction. What does that mean? It means that you have an army of believers and worldview reinforcers. They never have to present it. They just have to have a lot of people that believe it, defend against it, and we all act as though it's real. That's what I mean by augmented virtual reality, that we live in a simulation. It's an alternate reality game, similar to a delusion, but these are collectively agreed upon delusions. Upside Down Guy says, let's do an ISS watch party. How about you provide evidence for your space station and try to find Bigfoot and Chupacabra while you're at it. If you can find them all in one night, that would be great. A Chupacabra. And the argument that, well, there's a light in the sky. It's like, well, you have to rule out airplanes first. You can't call it a Chupacabra till you've ruled out stray dogs. But again, if you want to go hunt for things that don't exist, go for it. We're not stopping you. In fact, we've been asking people for years, provide some evidence, and nobody can do it. 360 Pick says, how was the watch party? Nobody saw anything. I had an observer in Denver. I'm in Albuquerque. We should have seen the same thing. We had 2 opportunities. We didn't see anything. It's supposed to be the 3rd largest or brightest object in the night sky. We didn't see anything. So now the people who say to me, oh, I've seen a light in the sky, you just never go outside. Well, what do you say now? Because I didn't see anything. But the burden of proof is NASA's. So if you want to do NASA's homework, go for it. There isn't, as far as I'm concerned, Hitchens' razor solves it for me. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in doing somebody else's homework for them, accepting their burden of proof. Even engaging in it is a bad idea, because the instant we said, hey, let's look, we had a bunch of people submitting bad evidence. So I had to raise the standards. If I say, show me a video of the space station, I'll get 50 people showing me an airplane. And they'll say, well, I don't know if it was the ISS. It's just a light in the sky. So I get this maybe, maybe not evidence, ambiguous. And I'm saying, no, we don't agree on that anymore. No more ambiguous evidence. No more maybe, maybe not. If you're going to submit evidence, I need a statement from you that says, to the best of my discernment as an eyewitness, and my credibility rests upon this, I believe this is the Millennium Falcon and not just an airplane. So that later, when we cross-reference your light with local airplane flights, we can say, well, maybe you're not the most discerning person, or you're not a credible eyewitness. So we need to also make it a point that if you're going to bring a claim, you have to do so as someone who's putting your own credibility on the line. And since having raised the standards to this level, we've eliminated so much bad evidence. There wouldn't be millions of believers in flying saucers if ufologists had any standards at all. But their desire to believe leaves them always, it leaves them susceptible to hope. So if they see a light, like, yeah, I think it might be an alien. I don't know. Constitute evidence of the supernatural. It might be more polite to ask the pilot what he thinks he's in before you submit that that light out there might be a UFO. Upside Down Guy says, what about the Montauk Monster in New Jersey? Yeah, there's as much evidence for that as there is for any other cryptid or UFO or spaceships. And I'm now placing ISS sightings in the same category as UFO sightings. And there are no valid UFO sightings. They've all been debunked. Upside Down Guy says, maybe Tim and Goldfinch wrestled naked for a few times. You seem to be fixated on this theme here, which is really interesting. I'm not really sure what it says about where your mind's at. But let's say it's true. What then? What then? Like, what does that have to do with worldview warfare being deconstructed by a growing mob of skeptics who just find it to be entertaining to deconstruct lies and to be removed from the mind war? Like, what does it have to do with it? Personal attacks or distractions. I try to avoid this stuff. And it's not going to go anywhere anyway. Most of the people here are very serious. Like, we're actually serious. We are serious here. We are objective driven. We have a purpose. We have been refining what we do. And so that's really all I have to say about it. I'm not in the business of banning people, but I do appreciate having some kind of a devil's advocate presence at times to do their best to see what sticks, and nothing ever does. J. Dig says there's a light up there when they say it is. Is there? I don't believe that. I don't believe it. If you say that there's a light in the sky, well, there's no such thing as a light in the sky. A light must have a source. There are no, it's just a light. Like, what do you mean, like a fairy? An orb? Like, what do you mean, just a light? There is no just a light. Lights are man-made. Now, you could say it's a star or a celestial light, but that wouldn't explain what is claimed as far as its movement. So, no, you can't just say it's a light. That's not an explanation. That's not an answer. But you say there's a light up there. I say, prove it. The burden of proof is on you. And the fact that we've had years and years of this and no one has done it is conclusive to me that there isn't anything. But you know the standards of evidence, and I look forward to anyone else also who wants to try to prove the existence of a starship. Upside Down Guy, $20. Everyone thinks Tim and Goldfinch are spatting. I don't know if this is going to get you anywhere. I don't know if this is going to get you anywhere as far as, like, there's no real comedic value in it. But whatever. I think you need better material. This Tim and Goldfinch are in love. Like, it's not even an insult necessarily. It's just kind of pointless. But yeah, you might be able to come up with something. I recommend ChatGPT. Oh, check this out. There's a Pokemon character called Gumshoe. Speaking of the ISS, I often say, when people tell me, oh, you can see the space station, just look at the app. I'm like, well, I can find Pokemon, I just look at the app. Well, there's a Pokemon character called Gumshoe who looks exactly like Donald Trump. I think you would all agree. Well, zoom in on Gumshoe's ear. Now, I don't know if this constitutes predictive programming, but the Pokemon with Trump's hair has a clipped right ear. Does anybody think there's anything to it? Lean Dion says, keep him coming, Upside Down Guy, comedy genius. Yeah, that might have been funny at some point. I don't know. I don't really see it. I don't think anybody cares. Now, as far as the thing tomorrow, I want to just give you a heads up. Tomorrow at 4 p.m., I will be premiering the Bonversation number, 51, my 4th time appearing on there. Jake the A-hole says, yeah, this guy pays to troll Tim. He does. He donates. He donates. I think he wants to support the channel, and I'm cool with that. Support it for whatever intention. Maybe he's supporting it because he wants to see us eventually find the truth, that the media doesn't lie, and he just wants to share that truth. Maybe he's got great intentions. 360 Pick says, the Donald Duck face upside down is Donald Trump. That freaks me out. Well, we live in a Disney universe, and that is kind of strange how much Donald Trump saturates our collective psyche. And when you see things, I do believe it goes into the back of your brain upside down and it gets corrected. But look here, it is true that Donald Duck upside down does look exactly like Donald Trump. This doesn't shock me one bit. Robert De Niro playing a xenophobic senator in Machete in 2010 foreshadowed the 2024 shooting of Trump. But how could it foreshadow someone who didn't exist in that form in 2010? In 2010, Donald Trump was not a xenophobic politician. How? Well, it's pre-scripted, pre-written history, and he's going into a prefabricated role. Even his hair is part of the costume. 777 says his name is Gumshoe, and Trump says, "Where's my shoes?" after getting his ear pierced. Right. All right, we have a few new blue wrenchers. Don Kane, K. Swan, Frank Zen, Leo Frigg, and Mimsy Schwimsy. All of you are now Blue Wrench Lodge members. Appreciate that. Now, being in the Blue Wrench Lodge means that you're going to get members-only videos. And there are so many members, I have to make it a point to record some. So I'm going to record some tomorrow. I would have done so today. I was out hiking. I actually saw a hawk descend on 3 roadrunners. And they hid beneath the tree, and I could see them talking to each other, like trying to avoid this thing. I tried to get some video of it. Nothing really happened. They waited it out. I recorded a hit and run in a Walmart parking lot. I saw a couple crash into a parked car laughingly, driving off. Dog Days of Summer continue until 8/8. Last year, 8/8 was the Lahaina fires, the Chinese space lasers. But the Dog Days of Summer go from, I think, 7/3 to 8/8. And this is when Sirius, the star that the elite worship, is behind the sun. And they tend to do a lot of interesting things around this time of year. And 8/4 is the date predicted by JL for the big one. Meaning that the Trump ear thing wasn't it. That the predictive programming involves the JFKification of Trump. It's meant to be not an exploding watermelon, but it's meant to be a significant wound where he disappears for a few days and comes back. So I don't think that the shrapnel splitting the ear, whatever they're saying now, I don't think that's it. I don't think that was the 9/11 that we're expecting. I think that's still to come. Upside Down Guy says, hiking and zero grass touching. Well, I've been going to the top of the Sandia, the crest here. I've been doing some high altitude hiking and painting and art. And I'm hoping it doesn't affect my health in a bad way because I realize I'm closer to the chemtrails. I finally get outside. I finally went outside and I looked up and I saw all those cirrus clouds. It's all just chemicals. So I might come down with chemtrail lung if you don't hear from me in the next few days. Jay Diggs say Olympics end on 8/11. I'll be watching. I'll be checking out some of the Olympic stuff. There are some indications that, in fact, I have to go through my Gilded server. I'm working on a couple of mind maps. There's just been too much stuff going on that we have to map it out. This Butler Pennsylvania thing is huge. The 42 miles between Butler, Pennsylvania and Palestine, Ohio, huge clue. We've had a lot of stuff with bridges. From the falling down of the Francis Scott Key Bridge when the dolly hit it, and then that connects to the Golden Gate Bridge, where you had a Francis Scott Key Memorial, or a monument, which was replaced by a 1619 project BLM memorial. There's a lot of subtext in the metascript, and the story is told through actors, through movies, but it's also told through big events and through monuments. A lot of fascinating connections with monuments. But what we can't say, and what has been emphasized in recent days, is that we do have a better model for understanding media. And this model involves a comprehensive understanding of what media is, how it has, news is part of it, but it's more or less entrainment more than entertainment. I call it the PSYOP entertainment complex. And what they do is they use entertainment to entrain your mind to what's happening in the news. You don't have to watch the news to know what's happening on the news. You could be watching The Boys, that series on Amazon, and here you are, season finale, season 4, episode 8, and they say, oh, we had to change the title of Assassination Run because of the Trump shooting. And the character Homelander, who represents Donald Trump, has blood on his face, and he's smiling at the camera just like Trump was. So the fact that Netflix occasionally has to put warnings on their programs because it matches the news is another indicator of how right we are. Okay, this has been fantastic. Appreciate all the comments. Thanks again, Upside Down Guy. I know we don't agree on everything, but appreciate the support of the channel for whatever intentions you have behind it. And, debate's healthy. Disagreements happen, and the way you solve disagreements, the way you arrive at better information, is by presenting your best evidence and comparing. John the Bond and I had a conversation about synchromysticism versus our explanation of predictive programming. And the purpose of the conversation wasn't for me to convince him or him to convince me, but for us each to present our best concepts and then let the people who are listening to us decide for themselves. And I think we've made strides forward in recent years, and I think in the last year it's accelerated in our understanding of what media is and how to understand it, because it's not disparate, disconnected, compartmentalized media companies competing for opinions, but no, it's monolithic and it's a unified field. It's ubiquitous and it's global in scale. It's not even useful to think of it as separate governments with their own media. No, their unity is given away when you look at global psyops where there is no disagreement. Specifically, the most obvious example is the space program, but we can look at many other examples. We'll be here. I'll be live here for 5 more minutes if anybody wants to call in, but I have to go have Actually, yes. If you want to call in, you have 5 minutes. I have to go do my Uber gig. If you have anything pressing, that is. Upside Down Guy says, can we talk about the assassination attempt? We'll give it a few seconds, but I only have about 3 more minutes. So, hey, what's up, caller? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Hey, I was calling about the Trump assassination attempt.
Sure. What is your opinion on that?
I think it's crazy. The first time I heard about it, was one of your videos, and you were replaying the whole situation, I guess like maybe an hour after it happened, pretty quick after it happened. And I made a comment because I didn't even know what happened, but like Donald Trump swatted his ear, and I mocked. I was like, what, did he get a mosquito bite? And that's his official statement, is like he felt that he got a mosquito bite. and then a few other things that are crazy. The whole multiple shooter angle is kind of weird. I don't know if you looked into the multiple shooter angle.
Yeah,
But
all multiple shooter angles are fake. There are no patsies, and in advance we said this. With every major shooting, they're always going to say second shooter, and that's to trick truthers who don't trust the mainstream. So we don't even follow second shooters. I said
that's why I follow CNN. Whatever CNN says, that's the truth. This is Upside Down guy calling in about the Trump assassination. But like whatever CNN says, like you have to give it like the reason, like without reasonable doubt. It's almost like Snopes. Like it's almost unprovable that it can't be false. Like whatever they say has to be true.
No, because they're not reporters with microphones and cameras recording real events. They're the production crew for prefabricated movies. A movie is a simulation, and these are propaganda movies. It may take the form of guerrilla movie making and a bit of a flash mob, but it's a psyop. A psyop is fundamentally a movie. So it's a movie. That everything should be understood in that framework. It's a movie.
Yeah, there's all these people like studying the audio of the microphone, and like they think they could tell how far away the shooter was from the echoes and the reports from the picking up from the microphone. But microphones have like gain, and sometimes they don't pick up properly. So you can't really do scientific evidence and say that one shot sounds like it came from 200 yards away, one shot sounds like it's 150, and then like break it up, because you don't know how exactly the microphone picked up the audio.
This is like saying that the engineers for 9/11 Truth had a point. None of those guys knew it was a movie. None of their expertise matters one whit. None of this stuff matters. It's a movie. It's a simulation.
Yeah, I want to just focus on this recent thing. Do you think like have you seen the GoPro or the camera view of like the people that climbed up like 20 minutes after? What do they call that? Is your body camera? Did you see the body camera with the guys blurred out? Have you watched the body camera footage?
Yeah, I watched that scene.
And does it seem sketchy?
Well, it's meant to be. You're meant to follow these rabbit trails. These are meant to sow doubt so that it's called fake. It's like searching for pyramids on Mars. You're assuming Mars is real. So if you're looking at this, is this sketchy? You're assuming something really happened. The principal point I'm making here is that the whole thing was a movie. It was a magic trick in a movie.
What I think is like they would have like, even if he was dead, they would have like tried to put him in handcuffs, because like what I've seen, is they put handcuffs on everyone.
They do.
So like
they do. He would have been handcuffed.
They, like,
yes.
Climbed up, but he's blurred out. So I'm like, is he handcuffed? And then like, where's the splatter from the bullet? Because if he was like there and he got shot with the sniper rifle round, you would think his head would have like almost exploded, to where they're standing right next to him and there's just like a trickle of dried up blood just running down the culvert of the roof. And you would have think like it would have been a whole scene, like it would have been like someone smashing pumpkins.
You know, it's really, but it's very easy for people to armchair remote autopsy something or a scene, but it's one thing to say, oh, this might be staged or this must be fake. But if you're not talking about the entirety of the media infrastructure being fake, then calling out an incident like this as though it's isolated is meaningless. It's a tree in a forest of fakery. So I don't get too focused on one tree. I recognize this is a forest of fakery. You got to look at the big picture. So there's no reason to get to the nuance here as though this is evidence.
Sandy Hook seems to be real. And then, I call sometimes to talk about the Buffalo shooting, and I just found out that the guy was arrested 2 years earlier and disappeared from social media and everything after 2 years from being arrested.
Interesting. Maybe that's when he got recruited, perhaps, into the into the operation. I'm not sure. I mean, he has every indication of being another one of these fake patsies, fake radicalized. He's just a crisis actor.
But yeah, it's just like, why can't we request Freedom of Information Acts on all these shootings
For who?
and get like why?
For who?
Why can't we? What?
Like who? I mean, who are you trying to get information for? Like, what are you concerned about? Like, for, I mean, what
Anything.
I mean.
Like, I want to try to prove that it's real.
Oh, I see.
Any one of these things. Like, why are we not trying to contact these mass shooters while they're rotting in jail? Like, they have ways that we can communicate with them. Like, why aren't we trying to communicate with these mass shooters while they're rotting in jail?
You certainly, I guess you can if you want to. I think what we don't have to do is we don't have to prove a negative. We don't have to prove that they're not lying. They have to prove they're telling the truth. And they have failed to do so again and again and again. I'm not struggling with any of this. In fact, if I had to take my time to debunk every story to my satisfaction, I wouldn't have a life. We can categorically dismiss entire claims based on lack of evidence and other factors. So no, it's not worth my time, but if you wanted to, you could try. I mean, I can point to an example. For example, the Astro World event where Travis, I think is that the one? Yeah, Astro World. Where Travis Scott.
People got trampled.
Yeah, well, he auto-tuned them to death or whatever. Well, somebody went to the morgue and they couldn't find any matching names to go with any of the supposed dead. So you could do extra legwork, but I'm not trying to convince Normieville. We don't need to. But
Well, I think you need to either. I think you need to promote doing the legwork, because what you're kind of scatterbrained. Like, I'm scatterbrained, but like you have
you're
like
confused.
So many
you're
ideas.
confused. You're
You
confused
have so
about the
many
nature of
ideas
reality.
and things like you want to do.
You
but, like,
believe
you never just focus.
You believe in
never
space
focus on one
stations.
topic
You believe in
and see it
space
through the end.
stations. You believe in space stations, and you've never recorded it, and yet you're mad because I don't believe in it. I think you're scattered. Just go outside and record it.
Well, didn't you try to do that?
Didn't you try to do it? No. Why not?
I didn't see the moon. Well, I didn't know if it was a moon transit. Like, you talked about it, and you're like, oh, in 20 minutes it's going to happen, and
You don't even
I
know. You don't even know what. You don't even know how it works.
I went outside, and I looked, and I couldn't even see the moon from my position. Like, the moon wasn't even available. And I was like, did he know? Did he try to do this ISS transit on the moon when he knows that, like, it's like the moon's not even out for most people?
That's not how transits are done. You haven't even researched it.
I'm talking about like a silhouette transit of the moon. Where it
I
happens, like,
specifically said the only transits we reject are lunar transits and solar transits. We cannot accept those because they eliminate eyewitnesses. Those ones are specifically said not to be acceptable as evidence. We need eyewitnesses. You don't get eyewitnesses with solar or lunar transits for a few reasons. If it's going in front of the moon, for example, you have to catch it as a silhouette. So no, I don't count those as eyewitness. I've been saying for a long time here, all I want you to do is use your tracker and then record the light in the sky. You haven't even done the requisite research to even start that. So you can't chastise me for not believing in it when you haven't even made any effort to demonstrate that it exists for yourself.
All right, chastise, chastity. I think you and Marcus Goldfinch got in big. I'm just kidding.
What is your opinion on the shape of the world? Like, are you just stuck on that? What is your reason for defending NASA so vehemently?
Well, if you say your opinion, it's an infinite plane. So if someone goes to Antarctica and sees a 24-hour sun, can it still be an infinite plane?
No. It's a ball. If it's a 24-hour sun, how do you explain it outside of it being a ball?
All right.
Unless,
well,
unless there's something else. I mean, I don't know. I'd have to see the information. You were talking about
from what I see, the evidence of us seeing too far seems too real. I mean, I haven't gone out there and seen too far, but the evidence that I've seen about all these people showing footage of them seeing too far makes me think that it has to be, or it's most likely flat. And then like them faking the 24-hour sun and doing all these just kind of hoaxes, all these like behind the curve, all these videos, and like you show how they put up optical illusions to think, like, show that there's a curve, but it's just like an optical illusion, and there hasn't been a proof of the globe without just saying refraction, and what you're seeing here is a mirage. It's weird.
Well, I hope it's a ball. I think it'd be hilarious. I don't have my hopes up that high, but yeah, I hope somebody proves it's a ball. But even if you prove it's a ball, you still have to explain why NASA has colored over it with bad CGI. Why are they presenting us with something false? But these are, I mean,
you don't think like once they prove it's a ball, then everything's real?
No.
What?
No.
Like Corona's real, the ISS, like all those wires are just camera glitches.
No, I'm sorry. You're never going to get the blue pill worldview intact again. If you've gone this far, you're never going to be able to put it together again. Sorry.
Like that hairspray is actually zero gravity. It's not hairspray. It's zero G.
Now, you seem pretty concerned that some people don't believe the news. What is the basis for your concern?
I hate the trutherverse to where I'm just like, I'm going, like, if people start saying it's flat and they show me an observation that it's flat, I'm like, okay, it's flat. But then if I start seeing like a McToon videos and like, oh, this is why it's round, I'm like, okay, it's round. Like, I'm just kind of like ping-ponging in between. Like, I will not steel man myself, in my opinion. I just like whatever anyone's saying.
Shape aside.
I was like, that sounds.
Shape aside. What is your concern? Like, okay, I don't believe the news media is reporting news most of the time. I mean, there is journalism, yeah, but I think a lot of these big psyops are instances of the news media doing a more significant role, producing events in order to shape our worldview.
Well,
does that offend you? Does it offend you that I don't believe news media is news media?
Well, it offends me because you're not trying to prove that they're actually lying. Like, you act like you're handing out press passes and people are going out and trying to disprove these shootings and these hoaxes, but no one's actually doing anything. They're just being keyboard warriors.
Do you know what a skeptic is? Okay. Who's the skeptic? Who's the skeptic here? The person who believes the news, or the person who says, I don't have enough evidence, so I'm going to suspend belief? Who is the skeptic? The believer, or the person who says they're agnostic?
Well, it's easy for you. Like, I mean, I'm not sure the question, but like what you're saying is like, oh, everything's fake, it's not real, without even looking.
I think I just explained a minute ago that I specifically said that the argument that everything's fake and the argument that everything is real are equally invalid. It's low info disbelief, low info belief. I don't have that problem. I'm an informed disbeliever. I know why I don't believe in some of the things you believe in, and I know more about these things that you believe in, and I don't believe in them. So no, I am not someone who says everything's fake. You're the one who's wrong because you think everything's real. And the fact of it is, it's fake until proven real with evidence. They're not providing evidence. That's not my problem. I'm not a propaganda mule that has to go do research to prove their lies. They have to convince me, and they suck at their job.
Yeah, they do suck. That's why I'm trying to promote, like, let's try to file our own Freedom of Information Act request.
Wait, it's not your burden of proof. It's the media's. They should be able to provide you that information. If they don't, why not? It's their job.
They're providing it. You're saying that they're not providing it, but they're providing evidence.
No, they're not.
And you're just saying, oh, that doesn't seem right.
A headline's not evidence. Jussie Smollett got lynched in the woods by two guys with MAGA hats that dumped bleached on him, and they called him the N-word, and he almost died. That's true. And for 24 hours, everybody said it was true. You would have been like, that's true. How dare you disbelieve it? Next day, we found out it was a hoax. So my point being, you don't take the news media as evidence if you're a thinking person, because you know it's a liar. The mass media is a liar, and you can't really change that. Its whole purpose is to lie.
Yeah, I just think the Trump shooting is, they want us to dwell and be like, oh, how is this possible? But it's like, did it happen? And a part of me thinks that someone actually could have actually gone up there on the roof and took a couple shots off.
Well, that part
But
of you
then
would be
it's-
wrong. That part of you would be very wrong. Because when you look in the bigger context, every single other person there at the event, we're talking about the Secret Service, the people recording it, the news media. If this person was an authentic, real shooter, then they were all behaving authentically. Everything else was real. Then the bullet flying by Trump was photographed by the guy who photographed the guy whispering in a Bush's ear. None of these other things would still be probable. Like the whole thing was improbable. The entire event was so scripted and phony. Trump doing the Braveheart pose, perfectly matching the movie cover. None of this stuff would have fallen into place so perfectly if it was a real shooter.
I think it's perfectly equally probable and improbable, which is what they wanted to do.
I think you're confused. You said I'm scatterbrained. You're confused about the basic nature of what's real and fake. If you can't tell what's real and fake, you're a skits. You've broken from
so
reality.
You're saying like the fake over encumbers, like it might have been real. You're like, oh, there's so much evidence that it was fake that compared to the evidence that it was
predictive
real.
programming, concurrent programming, real-time movie release trailers coming out that exactly mirror what we're seeing. No, there are far too many, quote, coincidences that suggest that this is another scripted event like so many before. The fact that we are predicting this thing also should also be something you factor into your assessment here. We have evidence that this is a scripted, fake event. Evidence before, during, and after. All you have is a confused take on things because you don't know what's real and what's not real. And I don't suffer from that. I'm not confused.
One kind of funny fact, whenever you first started reporting it, I chatted in that it happened at 6:11 and 33 seconds, and that's the official. I thought it was about 33 seconds, but I was like, it might be 34, 35, or 32 seconds. But I was like, no, it's 33 seconds. So the official documents is 6:11 and 33 seconds was the first shot.
Well, when it was 6:11, I said this number has very specific significance to truthers. Immediately after, we had a number of people already. Even Jack Posobiec tweeted 6:11 with no explanation. Steve Bannon in jail said he's got the armor of God, Ephesians 6:11. I call out the programming in advance. The fact that we're able to predict stuff and call it out says it's all fake. It's fake.
You already predicted Seattle in 3/11, and you said it was nukes or whatever. But the coronavirus, being the first people or whatever, the first American positive case, that's the nuke that went off. So you keep saying that a nuke's going to go off in Seattle still.
Hey, look, the predictive programming is very clear.
You already guessed.
People said, oh, Trump's just going to have cognitive decline. There's not going to be a headshot. No, the predictive programming is a model. And I'm telling you that there's going to be a nuke and there's going to be fallout. It's going to be fake, but they're going to do it based on the predictive programming. They're not going to deviate from their model. Their whole model is built on this, of predictive programming as a way of advertising ideas, narratives, and concepts and steering the mass mind. This is mass mind control. We understand how it works here. And so...
All right, you want to do a friendly bet? I'll bet you $1 that if a nuke happens, it's going to happen in Las Vegas, Nevada. That's my only state that I'll guess. You can guess any state or city that you want, state and city.
Sure. I'm going to have to actually head out of here now. I'm running late, but appreciate the call very much.
It's not going to be Seattle, so you already know it. You weren't even confident.
I'm only going off predictive programming. I don't know what your basis is. For example, when I looked at the fallout thing, I said the blood on the side of Trump's head, followed by Betty Pearson seizing Vault 33. That's Kamala Harris. And it came true. So my only basis isn't guessing. I'm not making guesses. I have a base.
No, you already predicted it. That 3/11 was Seattle, and it was the coronavirus, which was basically like a nuke, a world catastrophe event.
There is some indication that this mushroom cloud thing, this EMP, even though there's so much suggesting Pacific Northwest, I wouldn't be surprised if it was in Ohio. Because of the Palestine, Ohio toxic airborne event predicted by white noise, and then 42 miles away, the Butler, Pennsylvania thing. So it could be there. I wouldn't be totally shocked, but my point of it is they are going to simulate a nuke and lock us down, black out the internet. That's part of the script, like it or not.
All right. And just to, I mean, I don't want to throw out like the inside joke, but like me mocking you and having a sexual relationship, that's just a joke, buddy. All right. Have a good night, man.
All right.
Take
Thank
it
you.
easy.
Appreciate the channel support and all that. All right. So it was a joke. Good. Good. You know, we're like, no one's laughing, but I think it was a joke. But now we know. We got confirmation that was, in fact, a joke. All right. This has been fun. We'll continue this conversation tomorrow. And look, we figured something out here. We're not saying we have all the answers. We're not saying we can tell you what to believe. What we have figured out here is that belief systems are meant to connect you to a worldview. And you can reject the belief systems and instead adopt an operating system. And the operating system is called skepticism. And auto-hoaxing is rooted in this idea that suspend judgment, automatically assume it to be a hoax unless it's attended by evidence. So this has been great. This is Chief Crow, Auto Hoax or GTFO.